Hello, everyone, and welcome to the June 2014 International Fluoride-Free Teleconference. My name is Clint Grease, and I will be your host today. I'm so very happy to be with you all again. This is going to be an awesome conversation with Dr. Bill Hirzy. We're going to be looking at the industrial nature of fluoridation chemicals, where they come from, how they get into the supply. Then, because of his experience with the EPA, we're also going to learn about the federal government's control or lack of control of the substance. And so today's presentation is going to be accompanied with some visual slides that Dr. Hirzy has prepared for us today. So if you haven't already taken the time to go to your confirmation email and click on the link that will begin an application for your computer, allowing you to watch along with us today as Dr. Hirzy takes us through some slides. Please go to do that now. You can also join in on the Facebook page for today's event. Simply search on International Fluoride-Free Teleconference in your Facebook browser field, and then select the event for today's event. There you'll be able to post your comments or questions and communicate with other folks who are also online today. I'm so grateful to be together. This teleconference is an international gathering of fluoride-free activists who will share our information and experiences and inspiration so that we can support each other in our local, state, and national campaigns to end fluoridation. The success of today's teleconference, as well as all the monthly teleconferences, is based on your participation. So thanks for coming today. I also want to thank all the presenters who over the months have taken the time to put together some very informative and inspirational presentations for us. And today is no exception. So I'd like to actually go ahead and introduce our presenter for today. Dr. Bill Hirzy is on the line with us, and he is currently the Washington, D.C. rep for Fluoride Action Network, and he's in Washington, D.C. working for Fluoride Action Network. He had spent from 1981 to 2008 at the EPA as a senior scientist and chemist in the Risk Assessment Division on pesticides and toxic substances. He was the president of the Union of Scientists there at the EPA. And even before that, he actually worked for Monsanto. So today we're going to hear actually a fair amount right up front about Dr. Hirzy's life. We want to get to know him better. He's been on the beat for a long time, so I want you all to get a sense of what it's like to have somebody who understands these issues for many decades and what he's been through. And then we're going to get into the question of the substance itself, the fluoridation chemicals, where they come from, the process that ends up in our water. And then we're going to talk about some health effects, and ultimately Dr. Hirzy will have some comments for us about the political terrain that we are in today and what he sees as the best next steps for us all. So Dr. Hirzy, say hello.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. It's going to be interesting, I think. At least I hope so.
Yes, it's been awesome getting to know you in preparation for today's call. You are a hero to me.
Well, that's
and to many on the line as well.
Well, there are many more people who've done a lot more than I have. I've just simply been following my nose and following the leadership of people like Bob Carton and Bill Coniglio and Bill Marcus at the EPA Headquarters Union, who've really were leading the fight on this issue, and I'm just happy that I'm still healthy enough to keep up with this work.
Yes, thank God for your good health. Well, so, tell us a little about yourself. I know you have some photographs of you prepared for us.
I put together a couple of quick photos that sort of is a summary of my career track, if you will, and I'd like to share those along with some notes in connection with that. Let me put this up for those who are able to follow online. There, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 photos, and let's see. We're going to start with the first one. This photo is one taken of me while I was still in college, and my career track was not particularly to be a chemist and an activist in this field, but I went to college on a regular Navy ROTC scholarship, hoping to be a Marine officer, but that didn't pan out for medical reasons. And when I graduated, finally, after 8 years in school, I went to work for Monsanto and was a research chemist. This next picture is taken from a campaign literature. When I was still a research chemist at Monsanto, I'd become active politically in St. Louis County, and I was running for the Democratic committeeman of the township. I lived in Jefferson Township. My hair was a little longer and darker, and so was my beard. The next photo is also of a time when I was at Monsanto. At this point, I had, in 1979, moved from the research bench. Actually, that happened in 1978, into the environmental management part of the company, and was working closely with other companies in the that were in the vinyl plasticizer business, and developed a comprehensive environmental management plan for a big class of chemicals called phthalate esters that still are of regulatory interest to EPA and FDA and several other entities. In parallel to that, my political interests branched off into environmental affairs outside of the company, and I got involved in nuclear issues when some of my friends asked me to help them deal with some nuclear waste issues in St. Louis County, and we also became interested in the plans to build a nuclear power plant about 90 miles upstream on the Missouri River from St. Louis, and we decided that on the anniversary of the 3 Mile Island accident that we would stage a civil disobedience action up there. I wrote my boss at Monsanto a letter, a memo saying that I was going to participate in that. I might have to spend some time in jail. And he was nonplussed, to say the least. He said, "Do you know what this is going to do to your career, Bill?" And I said, "Well, I have to do what I think is right." And so I went ahead, and this next picture is a photo of my back and the back of one of my colleagues and others sitting on the ground at the site of nuclear power plant construction site in Callaway County, Missouri, where we were subsequently arrested. And that led eventually to my being removed from the environmental management position at Monsanto. I had been doing a lot of work with EPA and managed to convince EPA that the plan I had put together to manage the environmental and human health impact of phthalate esters made a lot of sense. I was able to convince vice presidents of environmental affairs for some major chemical companies in addition to Monsanto, BASF Chemical, Exxon Chemical, Shell Chemical, Tenneco, and sold that plan to all of those entities. And when I was removed from my environmental job at EPA, I realized that my career there was pretty much at a dead end. So I looked for other work, made some contacts with people at EPA, and about 9 months later, I was working at EPA starting in May of 1981. I immediately joined with other professionals who were concerned at that time at the beginning of the Reagan administration about the ability of EPA professionals to continue doing ethical environmental protection work with a minimum of political interference with our science work. And we eventually decided that we would form a labor union, and we did. We won a representational election in 1984. From that time forward, I was always a union officer in one office or another. Eventually, I served 3 terms as president of the union. One of the first things that we got involved with at EPA in terms of a conflict with EPA as the representatives of the professionals had to do with asbestos, actually. This led directly to our involvement in fluoride, but our asbestos work happened when EPA had sent some rules that involved banning the mining of asbestos and phasing out some of the uses for asbestos. And they had sent these rules over to the Office of Management and Budget. And one day there was a press conference in the administrator's office where the general counsel of EPA said to the gathered press people and environmental organizations that, EPA just realized that they couldn't issue these rules after all, that they had to step aside and let OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission handle these problems. And this made the EPA professionals who had worked on these rules for years and years and years with the science and had studied the legal authority of the agency to regulate asbestos extremely angry. And so I and some of my colleagues drafted a letter to the administrator, and they had 150 or so. Most of the science staff in the Office of Toxic Substances agreed to sign it, saying that the excuse that was given that the EPA couldn't issue those rules was made a travesty of our work, made a joke of our work. In fact, the Office of General Counsel and the administrator had looked at very closely at the law and decided that, in fact, EPA and also the legal staffs at OSHA and at CPSC had looked at the law and decided among all 3 agencies that EPA's laws had the only authority to do effective control. And for the general counsel of EPA to come out and say, "Oh, gee, we just realized we couldn't do this," just what made a joke of our work. And so the long and the short of that is that this got out into the media. And there was an article in the New York Times about this group of activist people, union people down at EPA who were really concerned about the agency doing the job that the citizens expected the agency to do, and wasn't it an interesting development? And pretty soon the phone rang, and I don't remember who was on the line because I didn't take the call, but it eventually they said, "Hey, you guys, would you like to hear a seminar about fluoride?" As it turned out, EPA was in the middle of writing its drinking water regulations for fluoride. And one of the staff members who was writing the regulation came to Bob Carton, who was the leader on the union's leader on fluoride for years and years and years, and I just carried his satchel around for him and listened in and learned from Bob. But said to Bob, this is a travesty. EPA is setting the standard of 4 milligrams per liter, knowing full well that a very large fraction of kids are going to have teeth that will look like they've been chewing on rocks and shoe polish. In other words, that they'd have severe dental fluorosis, and so we had that complaint. He said this does not seem ethically correct. I mean, what they're saying, EPA is saying that having teeth like that is not an adverse health effect. The drinking water law says that the maximum contaminant level goal, which must be set before the enforceable maximum contaminant level, the maximum contaminant level goal is a health-based standard and is not enforceable, but the law says that it's supposed to protect against any known or anticipated adverse effect on health with an adequate margin of safety, and it's supposed to protect all members of the population. And this decision to call severe dental fluorosis not an adverse health effect, but merely a cosmetic effect, just flies in the face of good science. So we responded to the offer to have a seminar by John Yamianis on fluoride with a big affirmative response. And so, interestingly, by the way, we couldn't have John Yamianis on site at EPA do the seminar. The agency was very anti-union, and at any rate, after the seminar, Bob Carton and I went up to see the director of the Office of Drinking Water and said to him that we had just heard this seminar by Dr. Yamianis, and it looks like there are a lot of adverse health effects in addition to severe dental fluorosis. And it turned out that the technical support document for EPA's proposed maximum contaminant level goal was in fact not written by any EPA scientists. It was contracted out to contractors. And so we said to the office director, we've just heard this seminar on fluoride toxicity, and we'd like the people who wrote that technical support document to come to the agency and present a seminar and support their position, and we'd like to hear that. And the office director said, "Oh no, we're not going to do that." We followed the Administrative Procedures Act. We put that technical support document in the Federal Register. There was an open comment period. And the comment period is closed. This issue is closed, and so that's the end of that. We in the union were very unhappy to hear that. We were also contacted by the Natural Resources Defense Council at this point, which had a lawsuit against the agency because the agency had already put into the Federal Register what's called an advance notice of proposed rulemaking, in which they laid out the proposed maximum contaminant level goal of 4 milligrams per liter and the enforceable maximum contaminant level at the same level, 4 milligrams per liter. And NRDC had sued the agency, saying that these standards aren't protective of public health. And they came to the union and said, "Would you guys like to join us in this suit? File an amicus brief. If you guys will write the science, we'll take care of all the legal stuff." And so we had a meeting, and the union voted to, in fact, contribute to this amicus curiae brief. Bob Carton did 99 or so %, I think, of the writing of the science material in that amicus brief. The brief was filed with the U.S. District Court here in D.C., and the court decided that they would not allow the amicus brief to be entered into the docket, because they said the union filing a brief would be in essence like the agency suing itself. And we made the argument, we thought of a good legal argument, that the labor union was in fact separate from EPA. We had separate legal standing from EPA. We were not a part of the union. Was not part of the agency. We were chartered by a national labor union, but the district court said no dice. We're not going to let this amicus brief in. At that point, especially Bob Carton, again as the lead, started getting calls for help from people around the country. I think some of the original calls were from out in the Midwest and Wisconsin, I believe, was the first one that came in, saying, in essence, asking us to send somebody out there who could talk about fluoride toxicity and help us fight the proposals to put fluoride in our drinking water. The union leadership met, executive board met, and decided that indeed we would send Bob out there if we could get someone to pay his airfare out there, and that's what happened. And this sort of thing happened after, several times after that. We got it. We went to our national labor union general counsel and asked them about accepting plane fare for these kinds of things, and he suggested that indeed this was illegal. This was okay. This was an acceptable thing, because we weren't taking any other kind of remuneration from them. It was simply paying expenses to travel out there, and so that's and Bob took leave time to do this. We had entered into negotiations with the agency about this point for a contract, and one of the prime things that we wanted to that we in fact organized a union around was this issue of being able to do science with some degree of professional ethics. And so we had one of the clauses in our contract proposals was a professional ethics clause, and that we traded back and forth with the agency starting in 1980. About 1985 is when we started the negotiations. When Bob and I went in to start negotiating with the head of personnel at EPA, the fellow asked us. They said, "How do you go about organizing a labor union at EPA?" And we said, "Well, it really helps if you get somebody like Ann Gorsuch appointed as the administrator." The first administration of EPA that was appointed by Ronald Reagan was really a convention of clowns, if you will, starting with Ann Gorsuch as the administrator. One of the assistant administrators, Rita Lavelle, eventually went to prison for some shady dealings that she carried out in California, and it was a very scary time to be a professional at EPA. Doonesbury during that time ran a series of cartoon strips depicting how scary it was at EPA. But at any rate, we eventually got into a problem with EPA and their indoor air quality when they installed some carpeting that made people sick, and this eventually turned out to be a national problem. Once it got into the media that EPA employees were sick in their headquarters buildings, this was during my first term as president, the telephone started to ring, people calling in from the outside saying, gee, I'm sick, my wife is sick, the dog is sick, the kids are sick, what's going on, can you tell us about it? We had that problem, plus we had a number of our people who became chemically sensitized and couldn't work in the building anymore. The long and the short of that is that we ended up having to spend a lot of time dealing with inquiries from the public and dealing with problems of employees not being able to work in the building. And management, the first line managers went to upper management and said, at that point, let me back up for a second. The union was operating on time use here on a clause in the labor law that said we could have official time for representational duties, and the first line management went to upper management and said we don't know how much work we can get out of all these union stewards who are having to deal with these other questions about the indoor air quality here. So let's see if we can't reach some agreement about that. When the carpet made us sick, I and a couple of other folks sat down, basically did a risk assessment on the chemicals that were in the carpet, and based on some literature that had come into the agency from the University of Arizona, where this problem had arisen out there, and the Arizona Poison Control Center was dealing with it. And so we laid out this risk assessment on the carpet. Said we need to do something based on this. Management looked at the risk assessment and said, "Oh, wait a minute, we can't deal with this, and we're going to let the Consumer Product Safety Commission take this problem over, and we're not going to deal with it." And I said, the Consumer Product Safety Commission doesn't have data like we have now on what's in the air here, what chemicals are in the carpet. We've got all these data, and we should be doing it. And I said, no, we're not going to do it because we don't want to get involved in lawsuits. And that sort of set us off. At that point, by the way, we were at draft 13 of our Principles of Scientific Integrity, and the agency immediately broke off negotiations on ethics negotiations with us. We eventually, the agency tried to scare us off of this problem. They threatened me with prosecution under a federal statute for representing people who weren't in government, which caused us to let's see what's happening to my something's happening to the screen here. Let me.
It's okay. I've taken your screen and just go ahead.
At any rate, we got into there's and Gorsuch in some of that stuff, but they in essence were trying to break the union. At that time, we had contact with over there were several hundred people and entities had contacted the union asking for help about this. And the agency said we were using official time to represent all these people, and we weren't. We basically were providing information on what had happened to us. And so we went to all these people, and including people that we'd helped on the fluoride issue, and some of the people who were possibly participating in this conference call were among those. We asked them to write to their congressional representatives and ask those congressional representatives to in turn write letters to EPA and ask why they were trying to break this union that had been so much help to them. after about 3 months of that, when congressional letters kept coming into the EPA Administrator's office and the General Counsel's office and the Assistant Administrator for Administration's office, the agency surrendered and came to us and said, what do you guys want? And so we got some full-time staffers in the union office and the ability to help people on the outside on official time in terms of responding to inquiries about our professional work. At that point, around that time, the cancer bioassay on sodium fluoride came out, and the results on that cancer bioassay. And let me close out this photo montage here and go back to this other. Oops, I don't want that.
That shot of you getting a medal in 1955 in the Marines, that's something else.
Well, I wasn't in the Marines at that time. I was a midshipman in the Naval Reserve. I was basically the equivalent of a midshipman at Annapolis at that point. My commission would have been in the regulars, not the reserves, but I was sworn into the Naval Service as a reserve midshipman at that point. Let's see. There we go. Let me get this. But in 1990, the results of this cancer bioassay came out, and that looked like it was going to be the end of the line for water fluoridation. A year or so before that, Betty Heilman, who is a reporter for Chemical and Engineering News, which is the weekly news magazine of the American Chemical Society, did a very good feature article. It was, 20 or 30 pages of a write-up on fluoride and the history of fluoridation and the history of repression of people who were opposed to water fluoridation and so forth and so on. And mentioned the union and Bob Carton in particular and Bill Coniglio. And shortly after that, then the bioassay came out, and the findings were that sodium fluoride was a carcinogen in was carcinogenic in male rats, which would have been the end of water fluoridation, because EPA regulates known carcinogens with a maximum contaminant level goal of 0, which means that you can't put any more of that stuff in the drinking water. Certainly you wouldn't be putting in as much as 4 milligrams per liter of this stuff, which is carcinogenic. I happened to be attending a meeting at the American Association for Advancement of Science here in Washington during that time, and I was sitting in the front row of the second section there, and there was an aisle in front of me, and there were two fellows whose names I do not know, and they obviously didn't know me or what my connection was with union at EPA, and stopped in front of me, and we're talking about this cancer bioassay. And the phrase that sticks in my mind, I heard one of the guys say to the others, he said, "Don't worry about it, we've got it under control." And shortly after that, there was a revisitation of the findings, and lo and behold, the findings were downgraded. And the way that happened in detail was this: the bioassay found 3 osteosarcomas in the male rats. They weren't in females, and they weren't in the mice. But in addition to these rare bone tumors, they found a rare liver tumor, hepatocholangiocarcinoma, which is an extremely rare liver tumor. And there was a relatively high incidence of this rare liver cancer in these mice. And it was on the basis of the rare liver tumors and the osteosarcoma that the original toxicologist and the original reviewer recommended a finding of carcinogenic in male rats. Well, when the review took place, all of those rare liver tumors in the mice were downgraded from malignancies to benign tumors. And because they were no longer malignancies, the amount of cancer decreased. They couldn't make the osteosarcomas go away. Those cancers were still there, and they couldn't make them vanish like they did the liver tumors. And so the classification was changed from carcinogenic in male rats to equivocal evidence of carcinogenicity in male rats. Equivocal evidence means that there may be a causal relationship between exposure to the chemical and cancer development, which ought to be, in my view, ought to be enough to cause people to say, wait a minute, you mean there is possibly a risk of bone cancer developing in these from exposure to this stuff? But you hear the pro-fluoride people saying, well, there's no evidence of carcinogenicity in fluoride regarding this bone cancer stuff. Well, no, that's not true. In fact, the federal government found that there may be a causal connection. Well, Bill Marcus was so ticked off at all of that he had he spent some time at the National Press Club talking about it, and he basically wouldn't keep quiet about it. And the agency then trumped up some charges against him and fired him. And there was a big fight over that. And many people who were involved in the fluoride battle out there across the United States, and maybe some people in other countries, I don't remember that aspect of it. But I know very many people here in the United States came to his support, as did the union. And ultimately, Marcus' lawsuit against the agency was decided in his favor. But that was just one aspect of how the agency is protecting fluoride as the protected pollutant. And at that point, why don't we plunge off into this presentation here, and I can fill in some other blanks about the work of Phyllis Molinix and some other folks. But
okay,
what
let's
I have
take
on
a breather. Thank you very much. Thank you. We're just going to take a little breather, though, because you've given us a lot of information to digest already, and we really appreciate it. I can tell you this is the kind of details that we need to learn about what really goes on in Washington, D.C. And thank you and the union for all the years of ethical, scientific, standing for ethical science. And I'm going to actually interrupt our program here just a bit to hear from someone at the Fluoride Action Network. Stuart Cooper is the campaign director at Fluoride Action Network, and I'm very excited to have him on the phone today because he's got some news for us. He's got an invitation, in fact, for us all. So go ahead and say hello, Stuart.
Hi, how's everybody doing? Good.
Doing
Can you hear me?
Thank you for being here. Yes, go ahead, Stuart. You're sounding good.
All right, Bill, you're doing a great job. I just wanted to, the Fluoride Action Network is pleased to officially announce that we'll be hosting the 5th Citizens Conference on Fluoride this upcoming September 6th through 8th in Washington, D.C. That's a Saturday through a Monday, and we have a lineup of great speakers already who have officially confirmed, including Chinese fluoride IQ researcher Dr. Zhang Pengyang, I hope I pronounced that correctly, well-known doctor and health guru Dr. Joseph Mercola, Dr. Stephen Peckham, of course Dr. Paul Connett, and his son, attorney Michael Connett, and Dr. Hirzy and Dr. Bill Osmondson, as well as myself and the entire FAN team, as well as more speakers that we will be announcing in the near future. So this is going to be an exciting conference with a lot of great experts. The conference will take place at the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Crystal City, which is just minutes away from the nation's capital and only minutes away from the Ronald Reagan International Airport, which has free transportation to the conference and is a very reasonably priced airport to fly into. We also have a very good discount hotel rate for attendees. So if you always wanted to visit Washington, D.C., now is the time, because I don't think you're going to find a better lodging price. We're planning to have the scientific speakers sharing the latest research and science on fluoride on Saturday, followed by Campaigning Grassroots Day on Sunday, where we will have speakers and panels on grassroots organizing and effective fluoride policy change. And for those of you who can stay for Monday, we will have the first ever Fluoride Lobby Day on Capitol Hill, where you'll have an opportunity to express your concerns about fluoridation with your senators and representatives and urge them to take action. So this conference will give you an opportunity to meet campaigners from around the world in person, meet the entire FAN team, hear from the latest science from the biggest experts in the field, be at the launch of an exciting new international action-oriented campaign that FAN is going to announce, as well as learn the most effective campaign tactics and gain access to FAN's latest advocacy resources. So we'd like as many of you to attend as possible, and we'll make it as economical as possible to participate. And for those of you in campaign groups, we urge you to start fundraising now to send at least one member of your organization to the conference who can bring back this knowledge and bring back the materials we're going to be providing. So early this week, we will be publishing a webpage with all of the conference details, along with a link for registration, and this will be shared on our social media and our email bulletins, as well as on our homepage. So please be on the lookout for this information. Start planning your trip to D.C. for September 6th through 8th. I hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll be there, and I'm looking forward to having a link where I can register. So as soon as that's available, I will make sure to get it out to the International Fluoride Free Teleconference audience as well.
Well, thank you.
Yes, thanks to you too. So let's return to the discussion of the EPA and the industrial byproduct, fluorosilicic acid, and where it comes from. Again, if you are following along with the application that you received in your confirmation email, you can watch the slides that Dr. Hirzy has prepared for us, and they will all be made available for download along with an audio recording of today's teleconference tomorrow. So look for an email from me with those links. So back to you, Dr. Hirzy.
Okie doke. Hydrofluorosilicic acid is known as in a couple of other names, including fluorosilicic acid, abbreviated FSA, and that's the abbreviation that shows up in the reports from the U.S. Geological Survey, which I uncovered a couple of years ago. The U.S. Geological Survey writes reports on various minerals, and within the report for the mineral fluorspar, which is calcium fluoride, it was buried some little nuggets on the production of fluorosilicic acid. It's used. It is a byproduct from phosphate fertilizer manufacturing, and I'll show you in flow charts in just a little bit, process flow charts about where in the process it comes from. But it's used primarily for water fluoridation. It's also used in treating metal surfaces as a cleaner and pH adjustment in textile processing and hardening of masonry and ceramics, and sometimes as a sterilant in brew tanks, interestingly enough. In the U.S., this is all information from the 2011 Geological Survey report. listed 3 manufacturers of fluosilicic acid: J.R. Simplot Company, Mosaic Fertilizer, and PCS Phosphate Company. And they operate 5 phosphoric acid plants for manufacturing of phosphate fertilizer in Florida, Louisiana, North Carolina, and Wyoming. And in 2011, they produced 65,900 tons of 100% assay fluosilicic acid. 100% assay means that's based on a 100% H2SiF6 formulation. Now, what's sold as a commercial product is 24 to 25% assay. So that translates out to about 264,000 tons of material used for water fluoridation. And the company's valued the 65,900 tons of 100% assay at $12.1 million. I went after talking to a number of people about where the fluorosilicic acid they actually write checks for, where the trucks come from that deliver it. It turns out that the manufacturers themselves don't so much deliver it, although one of them does have a large number of distributors. There are in fact 50 distributors listed by NSF Incorporated, NSF International, I should say. NSF, as you may know, is the entity that to which EPA delegated the authority to write regulations dealing with de facto regulations dealing with the amount of contaminants present in water treatment chemicals that can be introduced into drinking water. And NSF has a website which is listed on the PowerPoint that is showing on the screen, and you can click on this link and it will take you to the list of distributors. There are over 50 of them listed on the website. And it turns out that Mosaic itself has 14 different subsidiary distributor sites. Simplot and PCS also do some distribution, but there are a whole lot of other smaller organizations that also distribute this stuff. The first flow chart that I have up here is the overview for phosphoric acid and related products, which includes phosphate fertilizers, to show where this stuff comes from, starting with the basic raw materials. And phosphate ore is purified by some interesting techniques to relatively pure ore, and sulfuric acid is manufactured by reacting sulfur with air. And sulfuric acid basically and the phosphate rock are put in a reactor and heated. From that reactor, in this particular slide, I particularly wanted to show it because it shows the fact that uranium has been historically recovered from phosphate rock, and that's also one wonders about the how much protection that this particular process receives from the regulatory authorities. The fact that one of our major sources of uranium, or at least a significant source of uranium these days, is from the manufacture of phosphate chemicals. Then the second flow chart then is a more detailed flow chart showing how the superphosphate fertilizer is produced. In the upper left-hand corner, they show this phosphate rock coming into the plant, then being fed into a reactor along with pure phosphoric acid. That's the so-called triple phosphate, is when the phosphate rock and phosphoric acid are reacted, but you have the same kind of byproduct produced. The acid, whether it's sulfuric acid in the first flow chart, or phosphoric acid here in this flow chart, react with the phosphate ore. One of the contaminants in the phosphate ore is fluorspar, is calcium fluoride. And so the acid reacting with calcium fluoride produces hydrogen fluoride. There's also a lot of silica, silicon dioxide, as an impurity in the ore, and the silicon dioxide reacting with hydrofluoric acid, the HF, produces silicon tetrafluoride. Silicon tetrafluoride and hydrogen fluoride are both gases, and this flow chart then shows one of the outflows from that reactor going up to a scrubber, and it's at that scrubber where the gases of silicon tetrafluoride and hydrogen fluoride, along with other gaseous effluents, are scrubbed out of the emission stream that eventually goes out into the ambient air. And it's the scrubber liquid from that particular step in the process that ends up in our drinking water supply. It turns out that something has come to me over the years in studying this issue, that fluoridation, especially as it's supported by EPA, really doesn't have much to do with dental health. Fluoridation doesn't really have much to do to dental health. The people at EPA have to be able to read the same information that we have in terms of the efficacy of putting fluoride in drinking water. They have available that CDC publication from 2001, the report in which I have another slide on, saying that fluoride's action is primarily topical and post-eruptive, which means that for fluoride to do anything, if it does anything, it's after permanent teeth erupt, and it's what goes on the surface of the tooth. It has nothing to do with systemic exposure to fluoride. But what the fluoridation program has a lot to do with is that there's almost 300,000 tons, and probably it would have been about 300,000 tons in 2010 from the gross production, which was higher in 2010. But about 300,000 tons of hazardous waste would have to be managed in some other way than going into a tank truck and coming up to your local water authority and being put into your drinking water system, where then it goes out and most of it flushes toilets and goes down shower drains and washes clothes and dishes and waters lawns and puts out fires, and much less than 2% ever is ingested by anybody, and much less than 1% ever gets into the mouths of children that were the original putative target of water fluoridation, under the old theory of you had to get fluoride in the bloodstream in order to have it replace the hydroxy groups and hydroxyapatite to make the tooth stronger and acid resistant. CDC backed off of that theory almost 15 years ago. And the EPA's got to know that too, but I'll get to some more evidence of EPA's defense of the water fluoridation program in a minute. But what really what's going on is that the taxpayers in communities that buy FSA are in essence subsidizing this waste management program. You're paying good money to have an industry's toxic waste managed by dumping it into your drinking water supply and having it redistributed back out into the environment through our public water supplies. That's what it's all about. And EPA doesn't have to worry about these 300,000 tons of hazardous waste in terms of any regulatory or inspection issues. It's all taken care of by the water fluoridation program. And so you're subsidizing the industry, and at the same time being exposed to an agent that's neurotoxic, and it causes. It's now EPA is aware of the fact that it causes damage to the nervous system, and it also is a carcinogen. And there are carcinogens inside FSA. The arsenic load that comes with FSA, commercial grade FSA, is also an issue. Here's on this slide we talk a little bit about the economics. Basically, the 65,900 tons translates to 100% assay translates to 264 tons of the commercial grade stuff, and the industry valued that at $12.1 million, or they valued it as being worth $45.83 a ton. Now, in actual fact, they could give it away, and in fact, this is virtually a giveaway, because if they had to manage this as a hazardous waste, they would have to pay somewhere between about $1.50 and $2 a gallon to manage this stuff as a hazardous waste, and that would be all red ink. Instead, they get it. They get the black ink aspect of this by being able to sell it for amounts ranging from $700 a ton, more or less. Washington, D.C. pays that, to $2,300 a ton, which is what New York City paid in 2008. So what you're looking at is somewhere between 185 million and $528 million every year, ching as profits. This is pure profit to the phosphate industry. The slide shows somewhat lower profit figures because of subtraction of that $45 a ton figure from it, but in fact the pure profit is probably at least $200 million a year because of the avoidance of having to dispose of it as a hazardous waste.
I just noticed that the slide refers to incorrectly 2001. This is actually 2011 data that we're looking at. I'll make that correction in the.
That was 2011. Yeah, thanks for correcting.
I think that was my mistake. Go ahead.
But here's the letter from the Deputy Assistant Administrator for Water, Rebecca Hanmer, responding to an inquiry from a citizen. And I love this in places where I've gone in the past, and when I was teaching at American University, and I always taught my students about the fluoride issue. This paragraph just knocks people dead. In regard to the use of fluorosilicic acid as a source of fluoride for fluoridation, this agency regards such use as an ideal environmental solution to a long-standing problem. By recovering byproduct fluorosilicic acid from fertilizer manufacturing, water and air pollution are minimized, and water utilities have a low-cost source of fluoride available to them. So you don't even have to read between the lines to realize if they didn't have that scrubber in line and this stuff went out into the air, it would be an air pollutant. And if they took the scrubber liquid and discharged it into a water source, it would be a water pollutant. But if they put it in capture that scrubber liquor and put it into a tank truck and collect a big fat check for it, like magic, it's not a pollutant anymore, it's a product. Even when it goes into your water supply and ends up back out in the river anyway, after having flushed toilets and washed dishes and clothes and put out fires and the like. It's just so blatant. A major interest of the agency here is that it doesn't have to worry about this huge amount of hazardous waste because of as revealed by this statement from the Deputy Assistant Administrator for Water, who was Deputy Assistant Administrator back in 1983. And here's another example of EPA's endorsement, underhanded endorsement of water fluoridation, which is not supposed. EPA is not supposed to consider benefits of contaminants when it's regulating these contaminants. But this is from their press release jointly with the Department of Health and Human Services in January 2011, when they announced the recommendation change for the so-called optimum level of fluoride from 0.7 to 1.2 milligrams per liter down to just 0.7 milligrams per liter. And it says that EPA's new analysis will help us make sure that people benefit from tooth decay prevention. That's not your job, Peter. It's not your job to prevent tooth decay prevention, while at the same time avoiding the unwanted health effects from too much fluoride. What they're not pointing out there is that, in fact, what they said earlier in that press release was there's so many sources of fluoride now available that we don't really need to get more fluoride from as much fluoride from drinking water. And they didn't say, and the reason we found that out was that now 40% of American teenagers have dental fluorosis. They didn't say that in the press conference. They just said, oh, but there's so much other sources of fluoride from dental products and food and beverages and marine that you don't need to get it in water. As if changing from 0.7 to 1.2 down to 0.7 is going to make any difference whatsoever. It's going to make virtually no difference at all. But this is some cosmetic stuff, basically, for the CDC's parent organization and for EPA to sort of back away from the fact. This is the first time that any government entity has admitted there's any problem with fluoride, even though they don't say that the reason we're doing this is because the first signs of fluoride overexposure are now rampant in the population. They're just saying, well, you can still benefit from the tooth decay prevention, and we're just going to avoid the unwanted health effects from too much fluoride, as if this change is going to really make a difference. It's not. Well, here's some more, another aspect of toxicity from FSA and it's sodium salt, sodium silicofluoride. This slide is from work that was done by Richard Moss and his co-workers at the Environmental Quality Institute at the University of North Carolina. And what it shows is the results from experiments in which they put chlorine or chloramine or silicofluoride or a combination of chloramine and silicofluoride in water in contact with plumbing fixtures, and measured the amount of lead that was leached out. And the slide shows that chlorine alone leads, in this particular controlled experiment, leads to a concentration of about 13 or 14 micrograms of lead per liter. That chloramine by itself gives a concentration of lead of around 23 or so micrograms per liter. And that silicofluoride by itself also leads to about 13 or 14 micrograms per liter. But the combination, which we have here in the District of Columbia and presumably in many other cities, which do not use gaseous chlorine anymore because it's a very hazardous gas to be having stored in a tank somewhere in the middle of a big city. Chloramine is not a gaseous material. Chloramines and silicofluoride together lead to about 3 times as much lead getting into the water supply as silicofluorides by itself. So that was something that Roger Masters and Mike Copeland have been working on, trying to get cities to back off from the use of silicofluorides and see what happens to the blood lead levels in their kids and in the water supply by doing that experiment. But so far, I know at least in Baltimore, where that presentation was, that proposal was made, they decided they weren't going to do that. It's hard to figure why. Then this is some information now on a contaminant that's in FSA, and this is a slide that's taken from a publication that I and my co-workers at American University had issued in this year, in April of this year, as a correction to a publication that we had last year, in which I used erroneously annual figures for the cost of chemicals and lifetime figures for the amount of cancer that was caused. And so I submitted a correction in which I compared calculated just the annual cancer incidence that would be caused by hydrofluorosilicic acid, our pharmaceutical grade sodium fluoride, and the first set of data show a typical level of arsenic in FSA is around 30 to 35 milligrams per liter, which gives rise to a concentration of arsenic in drinking water of around 0.078 micrograms of arsenic per liter. And using EPA's risk numbers, that's about 4.5 to 5 lung and bladder cancer cases a year in the current population that's exposed to. Got some interference coming through my computer's microphone here. Let's see if I can turn that off. At any rate, what you see here is that the fluorosilicic acid and sodium fluoride, there's a factor of about 100-fold difference in the amount of arsenic that you get. There's about 100 times more arsenic in FSA as there is in the sodium fluoride when you get it into water at half a milligram per liter of fluoride. And that's reflected in about 100-fold difference in cancer incidence. Also show in this particular publication what if people one of the things that I've noticed trying to find out what the levels of arsenic are in different batches of HFSA that are sold. People will often say, well, gee, all we got from the distributor, from the manufacturer, was it complies with NSF Standard 60. Well, the third line here shows what value the NSF Standard 60 is in protecting health with respect to arsenic in drinking water. There could be as much as 380 parts per million of arsenic in the FSA and still comply with Standard 60. That would lead to around 59 extra lung and bladder cancers a year in the population, the current population of about 118 million people that are exposed to FSA. And if instead those people were having water that was fluoridated with sodium fluoride, there's only a 1 chance in 20 that anybody would get cancer. So the Standard 60 is utterly useless as a protective measure in terms of arsenic contamination from water fluoridation chemicals. And where that 380 milligrams per liter comes from is if you take the maximum amount of arsenic that could be in drinking water from then past Standard 60 would be 0.99 micrograms per liter, and the amount that's in FSA that has 30 milligrams of arsenic per liter is 0.078. So if you take 0.078 and divide it into 0.99, that's the ratio, the increase ratio. And if you multiply that then by the 30, this should be 30 milligrams per liter. That's my mistake on here. You get 380 milligrams of arsenic per kilogram of FSA would be permitted. I'm working on another publication now that goes into, well, how much cancer is there in the current population? Because people have been drinking arsenic-contaminated sulfuric acid since at least 1965. I was able to find in the CDC's publications of fluoridation census statistics, the number of people exposed in 1965, the number of people exposed in 1967, and 75, and 89, and 92. And they show up on this slide that I'm showing here, the number of people who were exposed during that during each one of those years' census. And so if you start out with basically 20.5 million people exposed in 1965 and almost 25 million in 1967, then the difference then is what I consider a newly exposed cohort. 4,300,000 people were newly exposed to flow-sulfuric acid in 67. In 1975, by 1975, there was an additional 26 million people exposed to it. By 1989, there were another additional 25 million people, more or less, and in 1992, another additional 3 million. And by 2010, I estimated by some means that I published in the previous publication about almost 38 million people in these are newly exposed cohorts. And I calculated then, based on using the risk numbers that EPA published in their drinking water rule that was published on the Federal Register in January 2001, what's called the population risk, and applied it to the newly exposed cohorts in each of those years, and calculated the amount of arsenic that would be present. And I corrected how much cancer would there be in these cohorts by this year, 2014. Well, the 1965 cohort, which started out at around 24 million people, by 1965 has only got 13.9 million people in it. What I did was I calculated the decrease in the cohort size each year by the standard mortality, which is used by the Department of Commerce. That's about the standard mortality rate in a given cohort of people. I calculated the number of cancers in that decreased size cohort each year from 1965 through 2014, and the accumulated number of cancers in that original cohort would be 54 cancers among that original bunch that was first exposed in 1965. And the original bunch that was exposed in 1967, which was a smaller amount, would only be 13 cancers in that bunch. In 1975, that new cohort would be having a total of 69 cancers by this year, and so forth. So the total number of cumulative cancer cases in everybody who's been exposed to HFSA since 1965 be about 200 people, or 200 cases of lung and bladder cancer among that group of people. And using the treatment cost that EPA used in the arsenic rule in 2001 of $3.5 million to treat a cancer case, it comes out to about $700 million to treat those cancer cases. Now, I could not go back and calculate what the treatment cost for cancer was in 1965 or 1970 or 1980. It would have been much too complicated, so I kept everything in 2001 dollars, and also applied that then to another calculation that I'll show you in a minute. If we stay on this track and continue to fluoridate with HFSA, we could expect by the year 2020 that there will be about 2,100 extra lung and bladder cancer cases in those cohorts, and it will cost us around $7.3 billion to treat that extra lung and bladder cancer. If we started this year using a different, if people wanted to go away from using HFSA and use a different way of fluoridating, if they wanted to still do that, which I'll describe in a minute, you'll notice that the amount of cancer increases very slightly because the sodium fluoride has a much lower cancer rate, and the total number of cancer cases, if we switched this year to using low arsenic sodium fluoride, it would be about 1,900 cases instead of 2,100 cases. So we'd save about 200 lung and bladder cancer cases, and the treatment cost would be about $1 billion less, about $700 million less. The message to take to local government officials is that you can do better by serving. You can serve our citizens better, and there are three main public policy arguments that you can make for that. There's more effective, ethical, and economical ways to distribute fluoride, including bottled water and toothpaste. If people want to drink this stuff, it's on them. If they think that's one of the major arguments that we've had all along, is that this is forced medication on people who don't want it and don't need it. And among these cancer cases, there are people who obviously have acquired lung or bladder cancer from drinking this stuff that didn't ever want to drink it in the first place. But there's a more effective, ethical, and economical way to distribute fluoride if you want to do it. Fluoride is a neurotoxicant, and I'll show you some more information on that. The impairment of intellectual development of all children is of much greater concern than trying to use an agent which is not really all that effective. It's not effective as a systemic preventive of dental caries. And evidence shows that you don't improve poor children's dental health by water fluoridation. And this is a table that Clint put together, summarizing in a very neat way the alternative way of distributing fluoride using pharmaceutical-grade sodium fluoride. Right now, community water fluoridation uses HFSA, and most of it is wasted. 98% of it ends up back in the river and never having touched anybody's mouth in the first place. So you're buying this stuff and basically just using it, just goes down the drain. If you provided fluoride in bottled water at 0.5 milligrams of fluoride per liter and 2 liters per person per day to 118 million people, that's the current number of folks who are drinking HFSA fluoridated water, more or less. All of it would be used. The ethical situation, this would be freedom to choose. You could get it or not get it. Governments could make it available for free, basically. In community water fluoridation, there's very little choice. Folks like myself and others who want to buy purification, I use a countertop distillation unit myself, but not everybody is in a position to do that. There's little choice in that. In terms of economics, I estimated that probably at least $200 million a year annually is spent on buying HFSA. I said roughly $185 million. If everybody paid $700 a ton, it would be $185 million. But there's some communities that I know pay $2,000 or more a ton. So as a society, we're paying $200 million a year to the phosphate industry to let them dispose of their hazardous waste in our drinking water system. We're paying $200 million a year to do a favor for the phosphate industry to use our water supplies as a waste management tool. If you we're using pharmaceutical-grade sodium fluoride. You could buy the amount of chemical that it would take to do that. This would be just the chemical cost, but it's only $600,000 to supply enough fluoride for all the people who are currently drinking HFSA fluoridated water. Obviously, it'd have to be set up a distribution system, and there'd be some issues around that, so it would cost more than $600,000. But it would be much more ethical and an effective way to deliver the chemical. And here's the comments on the efficacy issue that I know EPA is aware of it, and so are the promoters of fluoridation. That fluoride's cavities prevention properties were originally attributed to changes in the enamel during tooth development, but now they're fessing up that if it's effective at all, fluoride prevents dental caries predominantly after eruption of the tooth into the mouth, and its actions are primarily topical for both adults and children. In other words, after the tooth erupts, the high concentrations of fluoride in toothpaste is what's effective. Now, in terms of the neurotoxicity in kids, this is a slide showing the bell-shaped curve of IQ distribution across a population, and it shows how the average IQ peaks at 100 IQ points, and if we shift that peak down 5 points to 95, if the average becomes 95, what happens in the population? Well, what happens in the population is you lose a very big chunk of extra bright people. You're going to have fewer geniuses and fewer really bright people to make the community function. And what you're going to get in exchange for losing all those bright people is a larger number of people who are mentally handicapped, who have IQs below 70, and become wards of the state, as it were, and with all the problems that are associated with not being able to make good decisions and with not being able to function with a reasonable IQ. That's the impact. 5 IQ points in an individual person might or might not be noticeable, but in a population, it is going to be noticeable and have a substantial impact, and that's something that we should be paying attention to. This is a clip from the Lancet article. It was published online last month, or actually in April, I think, by two big names in public health, Philip Landrigan and Philippe Grandjean, and they've added fluoride to the list of neurotoxicants, elements that we need to worry about in terms of developmental neurotoxicity, that affects the development of intellect in children. Now, there's been a publication within the last month in New Zealand by a fellow Broadbent, who's a big promoter of fluoridation, and he claims in the article to put the rest, the canard that fluoride causes neurotoxicity, or that it negatively affects the intelligence of children, and this is the data that he uses to show that. This is a table taken directly from Broadbent's publication, and I'll point out why Broadbent's paper is little or no, it's actually of no value in resolving the issue of IQ loss. He classifies fluoride exposure in 3 ways: area of residence, whether children lived in a community fluoridated water area or never lived in a community water fluoridation area, and the IQs of those 2 different cohorts were 100.0 and 99.8, and he says, look at that. There's no difference whether they lived in whether it was community water fluoridation or not. Now, the first thing that you need to notice about that is that the number of people who were in the water fluoridation area was 891, and the number who never lived in a water fluoridation area was only 99, so there's a very small cohort here. Then he also classifies by whether people have always, sometimes, or never used fluoridated toothpaste. And again, the differences in IQ are minimal. 100.2 for always, 98.7 for sometimes, and 100.2 for never. And a relatively small number of people who never used fluoridated toothpaste. And then we come down to fluoride tablets. Yes or no, at age 5, had you taken fluoride tablets by age 5, yes or no? And those who did take fluoride tablets, 100.2 IQ and 99.7 for those who didn't take fluoride tablets. Now, the problem with this is, of the people who never lived in a water fluoridation area, there were 99 of them. There are 139 people who took fluoride tablets. Now, how many of these 99 people who never lived in a water fluoridation area, in fact, took fluoride tablets? They could easily all have been in this 139 people who had took fluoride tablets because their parents knew that they were living in an area that didn't have fluoride in the drinking water, and so they gave them the tablets instead. Likewise, the large number of people who used fluoridated toothpaste always, fluoridated toothpaste delivers somewhere between around 0.15 to 0.25 milligrams a day of fluoride, which is not an insignificant amount of fluoride. The bottom line here is that he doesn't have any really good low fluoride controls anywhere in this kind of classification. You can't make any calls about who got how much fluoride. So the differences in IQ that he reports, or the actual IQ values he reports, are essentially meaningless. So we come down to now another efficacy issue. This next slide, which will appear in 3 different and I will impose another slide on top of this and another slide on top of this, but what this first slide shows is that the 50 states plus the District of Columbia plotted in terms of the percentage of each state drinking water systems that are fluoridated, and they range from about 1% up to 100%. A couple of entities here have 100% water fluoridation, and the District of Columbia is one of those. Then, what's plotted here now is this is low-income children from the National Survey of Children's Health, which unfortunately this particular link that shows here now is not active. I recently, in fact in the last 2 days, went back to try to get into some CDC websites that I use to get the data on number of people who are exposed to fluorosilicic acid, and those websites are down. Now, one could have put one's paranoid shoes on and say, well, CDC is taking down data that people could use to attack the efficacy of water fluoridation. Well, yeah, it could be. All I know is that those websites are gone now, so the data are not there. But here's basically what this shows is that the percentage of low-income kids who have very good or excellent teeth basically tracks right across here, and there's no relationship. One would think that if water fluoridation were causing a beneficial effect, one would see a gradual rise in the number of kids with very good or excellent teeth. And in fact, I calculated the averages and the standard deviation for all these data points, and the average of the percentage of low-income kids with good or excellent teeth is around 54, and the standard deviation is pretty big. It's 8.2. Now you plot the number of high-income kids with very good or excellent teeth, and the first thing that leaps out at you is that a much higher percentage of those kids have very good or excellent teeth. In fact, that the average is 83 compared to 54 for low-income kids. So right away what jumps out at you is the difference in dental health has a whole lot more to do with socioeconomic status than it does with water fluoridation status, because here's the water fluoridation status, and one would think there would be some changes here, that perhaps these numbers would have been lower, but they're not. And another thing that pops out is the standard deviation here is very small for the high-income kids, which means once again it implies, at any rate, one of the inferences that you can draw from this is that high-income kids have access to good access to dental care, and so that's one of the reasons that they're averaging a very high percentage with good or excellent teeth, and that there's not very much variation here because they're getting good dental care, and there you have it. So water fluoridation doesn't have any impact actually on the number of kids with good or excellent teeth, whether you're wealthy or not. So the conclusion that I drew from all these data is, if you want to serve your community the best, instead of paying thousands of dollars to the phosphate industry for the privilege of its depositing of its waste in your drinking water system, and thinking that you're helping poor kids to have better teeth, even in spite of evidence from the CDC to the contrary, you should worry more about the kids' intellectual deficits that occur from fluoride ingestion, excess fluoride. All those kids now with 40 or more percent in a given community with dental fluorosis, that's overexposure to fluoride. What the impact on intellectual deficits caused by fluoride, what the impact of those intellectual deficits have on the community. If these kids have lower IQs, have lower reasoning ability, make poor decisions, that can have a very big impact on the community. If you want to spend money on dental health, spend it on education in grade schools. There are programs. There's a very good program that's operating in Scotland, where and there are other places where brushing teeth is emphasized, and minimizing the exposure to sugar and other agents that cause erosion in the teeth. There are ways to really get at better dental health. In addition, also seeing that your kids have some access to good dental care, the poor in your community. So don't throw your money away buying hazardous waste from the phosphate industry and think that you're doing some good for poor kids, because you're not. So here endeth the epistle from Bill Hirzy.
Thank you.
To take any questions.
Yes, we'll be definitely opening up the lines for some question and answer. You've given us so much information. So, folks, get ready to ask your questions. Really, it's open-ended, whatever area of interest you want. Before we do that, though, I just want to make a couple of announcements for upcoming events. The monthly teleconference will happen again in July if all goes well. That will be the second Saturday, again, in July, which is July 12th. So expect an invitation for that and an opportunity to register online. Please, for everyone who registers for the July teleconference, I'd like to ask you just to invite 2 more people to join. And so the request really is to register yourselves and then get 2 more people to register too. And then another event that I'm holding this summer, just 2 weeks from today, is a mixer. So 6 months ago in the wintertime, some of you may have been there, we did a social mixer of international fluoride-free teleconference activists from all over the world who just wanted to get together, and it's very casual. It's just an opportunity to meet folks from around the world, talk about whatever is important to you. And in that 1-hour event on June 28th, I will break folks up into small groups so you can talk, and we'll do 3 or 4 rounds of small group discussions, and give you a chance to just mix with some like-minded people from all over the world. So expect an invitation for that as well. That'll be the International Fluoride-Free Teleconference Summer Mixer, June 28th. And then I just want to ask for donations for the teleconference. The teleconference costs each month are $150. That covers the teleconference system that you're using today, together with the visual displays. It also pays for the email service that gets the word out to, looks like we have about 1,000 people on the email list nowadays, and as well as the file sharing document download site that allows me to provide you all with the documents that come along with the presentations. So if there's someone out there who'd like to raise your hand and claim make a promise of a donation, I'd appreciate it. You can publicly declare your promise to donate, and then I'll get back to you with the details about that. You're all welcome to reply to me by email if you have an interest in donating, or your contribution to the teleconference could simply be your feedback. So I'm very interested to hear from you all as well about how it's going for you, what you appreciate about it, what you'd like to see in the future. So either way, if you want to contribute cash, that's going to help us keep going every month. And if you want to contribute your ideas and your feedback, that's also very valuable. So if there's anyone out there who would like to raise your hand and be publicly recognized, I will do that right now. And okay, Dr. Jim Maxey, a dentist from Tulsa, has been very generous in supporting the teleconference a couple times already, and I thank you again for raising your hand one more time. Any amount is okay, from $10 to $150. It's really up to you. So thank you all for listening to the announcements and my request for donations. We'll get into some question and answer period. I know you have a lot of questions, so all you need to do is press the 1 on your keypad to raise your hand. If you want to ask a question, I will give you the mic, and Dr. Hirzy will answer your question. Okay, let's go to Olemara Peters. Go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, we can hear you. Where are you from?
I'm in Redmond, Washington.
Wonderful. Thanks for being on the call today.
Well, thank you. I'm hoping you got my mailing a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, Olemara is very generous to contribute to the teleconference. Thank you very much.
You are welcome. Having Dr. Hirzy on is a great celebration for me. I wanted to ask Dr. Hirzy, you said you were going to say a little about Phyllis Mullenix. I would love to hear your whatever update about Phyllis and her work and the work of Second Look.
Well, Phyllis, I just reviewed a paper that Phyllis has gotten published now on contaminants that appear in the fluoridation chemicals. There's apparently some considerable amount of cross-contamination that occurs among the water fluoridation chemicals, and in fact there may be contamination with other substances that occurs during shipment of these things. When I said say more about Phyllis Mullenix, it probably would be what I was thinking about at the time was her publication on the neurotoxicity of sodium fluoride that also points toward developmental neurotoxicity in that the pregnant females who were exposed to fluoride that gave them serum levels of fluoride that were equivalent to human serum levels of people drinking water at what current MCLG is that is 4 milligrams per liter. Those pregnant female rats gave birth to pups that were hyperactive at birth, and they remained hyperactive for life. So if one applied the standard risk assessment safety factors to the fluoride levels that those pregnant female rats got, you would see that the levels of fluoride that we are exposed to now are not safe and could conceivably be contributing, especially if pregnant women have an exceptionally high amount exposure to fluoride, could be contributing somewhat to the amount of ADHD that is showing up in kids and maybe some other kind of developmental neurotoxic effects.
Yes. Yes, that was a wonderful piece of it, and I would love it if more people in this society were paying attention. That reminds me, as you mentioned about the rats, your earlier description of one of the first studies, you've at first said rats and then you said mice.
The cancer bioassay was done on rats and mice.
Both,
but
okay.
In that NTP bioassay, it was found to be carcinogenic in male rats. That was the original finding, but not carcinogenic in female rats or in either sex of the mice. I think that was the time that I referred to mice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
you for clarifying that.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Olemara. And Dr. Hirzy, you said that the one cancer that showed up was a rare cancer. When you say it's a rare cancer, what does that mean? Do you mean it's rare to find it in a laboratory toxicological study, or do you mean it's rare in humans? What does that mean exactly?
Well, it was rare in it's rare in the mice. Excuse me. I don't know much about the incidence of that cancer in humans, but it was extremely rare in mice, and in fact, the pathologist who had first discovered that particular tumor, Dr. Mel Ruber, was conferred with Bill Marcus about this, and Ruber was not real happy with the downgrading of those tumors either. So it was quite rare in mice for that tumor to develop, and so once the
yes, just as a novice, I would think that the importance of that tumor showing up in that mouse or that rat is that it might show up in humans too, and in which case, if fluoride was a causal, if it causes that particular cancer, then wouldn't we expect to see it in the human population?
It's not. It's not always. There's not always concordance between the site of carcinogenesis in animals and humans. And as I said, I don't know what the incidence in humans is. The incidence of osteosarcoma in humans is very, very low, for instance. But the incidence that showed up in those mice, in those rats, there I go slipping into mouse again. The incidence in the rats was quite high, and in fact, I had a statistician at EPA calculate what the risk, characterize the risk to humans based on that rate of incidence in those rats, and it would be 1 in 1,000.
Wow.
That is to say, 1 in 1,000 people drinking water at 1 milligram per liter would be expected to develop osteosarcoma, and we don't see anything like that as a osteosarcoma rate. It's very low. Off the top of my head, I don't have it. I did know that number in the past, but it's an extremely rare tumor in humans.
Okay. Well, great. Thanks for that clarification. I'm going to get some more questions going here. Karen Boyer in the San Francisco Bay Area. Welcome.
Hello. Yes, I'm curious about the the distribution system going to the cities, and all of a sudden now they're not responsible for what they put in the water. Why is that? What happens? There's the Clean Water Act, but the EPA is responsible only to industry. Is that? I'm not sure how to outline this diagram.
Well, I'm not sure about your question. The distributors simply take the product from the manufacturer and sell it to the cities. Now, in terms of legal liability that a distributor has for any toxic effect, that's a question for a lawyer, and I simply don't know the answer to that one.
So if it goes from the phosphate industry, the EPA intervenes to prevent that from polluting our public water, but if they sidetrack it and sell it to cities, they can turn around and put it in the water with no risk.
Oh well, okay, I can explain that. The level that would be discharged from a manufacturing site would be high enough that it would exceed the so-called effluent limitations. There's a limit to the concentration of fluoride that can be put into drinking water, and the amount that's produced at a phosphate plant, a phosphate fertilizer plant, is so high that if it were discharged into a local waterway, it would exceed the limit. There's no what EPA has set as a safe drinking water level is way below what the effluent limitation. If I can call up on my PowerPoint. Let's see. I have a. Let me open up. I go over to here, and I can tell you what the effluent limitation for fluoride is. Let's see. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. Let's see. Statutes. Okay, this is airborne. Oh, here we go. Let's see. This is airborne emissions. And get to water emissions. Effluent limitations. The maximum is 25 milligrams of fluoride per liter is the daily maximum, and 25 milligrams of fluoride per liter is a monthly average maximum for phosphate fertilizer manufacturing operations. So that's way above the maximum contaminant level, enforceable maximum contaminant level is 4 milligrams per liter. So they could put it in at 4 milligrams per liter, and it would not violate the putative. These limitations are set based on protecting aquatic ecosystems. The biota in the receiving water is what this is set for. Obviously, someone couldn't be drinking water at that
So
level.
really, when we perceive our San Francisco Bay and some of the Sacramento River, all that fluoride is going in there, but it's really such a low level it's not harming anything except if you're referring to the Columbia River, huh? Is that how it works? The Columbia
well, yeah, I wouldn't say it's off the top of my head that it's not harming anything, but the amount that's coming from the sewage treatment plants theoretically is not going to be any higher than what the amount coming into your water supply would be, and even in fact it would probably be somewhat less because of dilution from rainwater runoff and that sort of thing. But fluoride can be toxic to salmonid fish. I mean, I forget now what the level is that has been shown to make fish, the salmon, make salmon dumb enough that they won't use fish ladders, for instance. And I forget now what the number is. It may very well be close to 1 milligram per liter, but I don't know for a fact that that's the value.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hirzy.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Karen. Let's get a question from Dr. Richard Sauerheber. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the presentation. It's very good. It's very good. My main question, I have two of them, but the main one is, the Mullenix new article proved that many of these fluosilicic batches, after they're diluted 250,000-fold, still produce about a quarter ppb of arsenic in the final product drinking water. So I'm wondering, an opinion letter from Rebecca Hanmer does not invalidate the Clean Water Act or the Safe Drinking Water Act. So I'm wondering what the real holdup is that's preventing the EPA from banning the intentional infusion of arsenic into public drinking water.
That's
a
really
type 1A, type class 1A human certain carcinogen, like you mentioned.
Yep.
What is the hang-up? What is preventing them from doing?
Well, what's preventing it is that the enforceable maximum contaminant level is 10 parts per billion, is 10 micrograms.
Well, I realize that, but I thought you mentioned early in your talk that it was illegal really to intentionally add any certain human carcinogen into public drinking water at any concentration.
It's not illegal. It's not against the law. It's just that that level is not a level that will prevent any known or anticipated adverse effect on health. The EPA's and the methodology that I used in my 2013 and the 2014 paper assumes a no threshold level for carcinogenesis. So even at 0.078 micrograms per liter, that would cause, as I said, in 118 million people, that cause around 5 cancers a year, lung and bladder cancer. So it's EPA knows that very, very low level, 1/100th of the MCL would still cause cancer. So they know that, but it's not against the law.
Well, anyway, you could point out that the Mullenix...
It's against any kind of ethical consideration, but it's not against the law.
Yeah, well, at least you could point out that the Mullenix data shows that it's 0.25 ppb, so that's quite a bit higher than what we have on the table.
Yeah, it can't be. Yeah, it can be that high. Yep, I realize that. In fact, I was going to say, the data
second question I had
shows at 0.15 is the average that was found over the last couple of years. Is already 0.15.
Yeah. The other question I had is, we have a petition to ban fluoridation with the FDA that's been under review for about 7 years. They're still considering it, but we're trying to get them over the edge, and I was wondering if you could send them or get someone from the EPA to write to them, because they keep trying to get out of it by saying that EPA should be regulating water fluoridation. But the EPA will not regulate or monitor water fluoridation. And I'm trying to drive that point home with the FDA myself, and it's pretty difficult. If there was a way to get somebody to write to the FDA in support of the petition from the EPA, that could really help.
That'll never happen, because EPA doesn't want to have to deal with the 300,000 tons or so of hazardous waste. It has to go somewhere. And it's
but isn't there someone at the EPA Union?
Now it goes into our drinking water supplies.
Isn't there someone in the EPA Union, or even you yourself, that could write?
Well, you can contact me offline. The union anymore is not as interested in this issue as when I was an officer there. But contact me offline and we can talk about this.
Okay.
But basically, FDA doesn't have a role in FDA's role is in regulating fluoride in bottled water, for instance, but not in public water supplies.
Yeah, well, they've informed us that they're thinking about going into water because I've sent convincing evidence that the EPA refuses to regulate water fluoridation, and they know no one's regulating it. No federal agency is regulating it right now. No one's evaluating the effectiveness and everything. Okay, thanks.
That's right. Thank you, Richard, very much. I'm going to try to get one more call here from Anna Felton in Ireland. Are you there, Anna?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Clint?
Yes, thanks for staying up so late there.
Oh, my goodness. You can't believe it. I can't believe I'm still awake. I am exhausted. But anyway, I don't really have a question. I'm just finding it fascinating and want to thank you and Dr. Hirzy and all your contributors. It's a wonderful project, and I just have great hopes that things are moving, and this will finally and eventually be revealed for the stupidity that it is. So,
Amen.
Thank you again. I put my hand up to make a donation, not to ask a question. That was why I raised my hand.
Well,
okay, great. Thank you, Anna.
I understand if the Irish Greens get political power, that'll be the end of fluoridation in Ireland.
I'm a Green. We blew our chance when we joined in with one of the major parties, and we have lost all credibility now, unfortunately. So, yes, there's all sorts of intricacies that we have to jump through, hoops to be jumped through. It would be lovely. There's a lot going on. Cross-party lines in the southwest of Ireland, in County Cork. There are huge numbers of county councillors who are anti-fluoride and have put resolutions that have been passed. And so there's a huge movement here. And it just takes the final click into place to turn off that switch.
I think
although we do have... Sorry?
Go ahead.
We do have a law, by law, we have mandatorily to fluoridate our water since 1964. So if it can be turned off this year, it is 50 years, and that would be a great celebration.
It certainly would be, and I'm hoping that these new data on developmental neurotoxicity may be the straw that breaks the back of that camel. And
all credit to Declan Wall and to Aisling Fitzgibbon. Their work has been prodigious.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you, Anna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for those good wishes.
Oh, you're welcome. And, good luck to everyone. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Oh, good night. Yes, so that brings to close our monthly teleconference. Thank you again, Dr. Hirzy, for your wonderful presentation. It is now on record. An audio recording has been made, and everything you've said is now available for everyone to download. And I want to let everyone know that as soon as this teleconference ends, there will immediately begin an opportunity for you to be in conversation with folks who have been on this teleconference in small breakout groups, just a casual setting. After those people who choose to hang up, which will take a minute. Just hang out, and you'll be automatically put into a breakout room with 3 or 4 other people, and that will allow you just to hang out. You'll be unattended, and you can talk as long as you want. Make sure to exchange contact information. If you meet people that you want to stay in contact with, please do that. And I guess we'll be talking again in 2 weeks at the Summer Mixer, and a month from now on July 12th for the next teleconference. So thanks to everyone again, and goodbye for now.
Clint, are you still with me?
Yes, I'm still here. I'm breaking folks out into the well, let's see.
I'm gonna sign off here and go get some dinner here shortly. I just responded to an online inquiry from Justin, who said that his computer audio has just gone nuts, and I texted him back that I understand that audio will be available soon. So if you can have a way of contacting Justin with more details on that, that would be good.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you.
Okay, doke. I'm going to sign off.
I'm still here. I was wondering something.
Okay. What?
The doc-
well, we're all here together, Justin. Now we've got 6 people left, and we're all together in one room, and everyone's got their mic on. So you're welcome to speak or listen as you like. Go ahead, Justin. Introduce yourself. Okay.
He was saying that his computer audio has gone crazy, so he made.
Yeah, I'm going to send the audio recording out to everyone. He'll get a link just as everyone else will. So if anyone out there would like to say hello, there's Alli from Seattle, Alice from Toronto, Richard, San Diego, Sandra from Louisiana, Olemara.
Yeah, I still had one more comment before Dr. Hirzy has to go.
Go ahead.
And that was all we need. All the FDA would really need is a little single sentence, like you said in your talk, which was that the EPA does not really have the authority to check for the effectiveness of drinking fluoridated water, whether it works or not. If that was just sent to the FDA from someone like you, that would be huge, because they just really assume that the EPA is in charge of all of it. But they aren't really in charge of it and never have been.
That's true. They don't deal with it. Don't deal with the benefit side of any one of the contaminants that they regulate. It's just not. It's not under their authority in the Safe Drinking Water Act to do that.
Yeah, so if you could just send that sentence to the FDA, I'll give you the number of the petition and everything, and that would really help. They accept comments from the general public in support of the ban petition.
Well, send me an email if you would, Richard, and include as much detail as you can, and I'll do what I can.
Okay, and do I have your email address anywhere? Can I get it through you, Clint?
I'll give it to you. It's very simple. It's JWHIRZY
Okay.
@gmail.com.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
You're welcome. I'm going to go get some dinner now, guys.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, take care.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
This is Alli in Seattle. Am I on?
Hi, who's that? Alli, yes, hello.
I did send you a question as a water commissioner, and what gives me great concern that I touch on, and that is in the progress of the fluoride from the manufacturer and all the steps it goes through to get to the water district. Well, in those steps, you have, of course, the MSDS sheets, the material safety data sheets, and as well as one from NSF 60. Well, what gives me great concern is on every single one of those MSDS sheets, it puts the liability onto the water district. The last sentence from the Mosaic disclaimer is, the conditions and use of this product are beyond the control of Mosaic, and Mosaic disclaims any liability for loss or damage incurred in connection with the use or misuse of this substance. So all the liability from all of the fluoride people is put on to we, the water districts. That, to me, is scary.
It would be nice if water districts then said, okay, we're not going to put this stuff in the drinking water anymore because we don't want the liability either.
Well, recently I had an opportunity to speak to the director of the largest fluoride provider, Seattle, here in Seattle, and told him how he could save hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and asked him if he had ever read the disclaimer. He said, the what? I handed him the one from the NFS 60. He was shocked. He had never read it.
Oh.
So he has not gotten back to me. I don't know. I planted that seed in him, made him aware of the disclaimer, and that he is responsible for the liability, and they also sell water to about 12 other districts. Fortunately, my district isn't fluoridated, but I belong to a big group, and a lot of them are fluoridated. And my concern is, oh my gosh, with what's happening, I want to protect the water districts because they can't afford to be for the harm.
Yeah, I mean the water district does. The water district charter is to provide potable, safe water. It's not.
Well, we're not in the business.
It's not to prevent dental caries.
Yeah, but hello, we're not in the business of medicating people.
That's right. That's right.
So this has been one of the greatest educational calls I have ever heard, hearing the story of Dr. Hirzy. I'm so thankful that you had him on.
Thank you. I'm glad that my contribution is of some help to you.
Oh, you're still on. Okay.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. I stayed on the telephone line. I went off of the offline on the computer, but it's hard to go away from this thing that I've been working on for almost 35 years.
Yeah. So, well, then I guess what my main question would be is if we could rally people to get copies of the MSDS sheets from their water district, go to their city council meetings, and warn them that the liability is on them.
Yeah, that I think that has been tried from time to time, and I think it does put the fear of God in some people. I know there's a place down in Tennessee that's said has gone to the supplier, fluoride supplier, and saying, look, if you will guarantee that basically take the liability, then I will consider buying your product, and they get no response from the supplier.
Yeah, and that worked out in the city's favor because the chemical supplier just up and left town.
yeah, that's
and that's the backtrack position I'm asking the FDA to take, is just simply for the FDA to write a letter to a supplier, chemical supplier, asking them for any information they have on how they know it decreases dental caries when you consume the product, what they have on file, just for the files for the FDA. That's all they have to do. I think it would halt everything, because when the FDA speaks, everybody panics. And if they wrote a letter like that to a major supplier of the fluosilicic, I think it would just phase the whole thing out, and they would find a different market for their material. That's what I'm hoping for.
I am going to say goodbye for a while now, guys. I'm gonna have to go down and say hello to my wife and eat some dinner. So it's been a pleasure to be on this call, and good luck to everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you dearly.
All right, so Alli, Larkin from Seattle's on the line, Olemara Peters from Redmond, and Richard. So introduce yourselves, get to know each other.
We're all already one organization.
Yeah, we're all that Washington Action for Safe Water.
Oh, you two know each other well then?
We do.
Yeah.
I am very glad of Alli's and Richard's support in our attempts to rabble-rouse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we're tremendously glad of yours. This is a lovely format you've put together with the recordings and now the slideshows, etc. afterward. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You know, it's a real pleasure, and I've been lucky that the some of our leaders are very willing to come and share their information and their history and their inspiration, really. While we're on the topic, do any of you have ideas for a future teleconference? Anything that you think is like a hot topic these days, or something people are, a kind of topic that deserves a 2-hour dedicated period of time?
I do, but I asked the folks if they would allow me to stick their names up, and they were not quite ready. They're thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, there are some things going on. I've talked to a few people around the country who are got their hands in some things that they don't want to share because, well, one of the downsides of being against fluoride is that we do most of our organizing in public. We can't go behind the scenes like they do.
Right.
So, what the conversations that happen on these teleconferences are public, and so some people aren't willing to yet, talk about what they're doing for fear that, our opposition will do an end round or something,
right.
Which I do appreciate. But so we've covered, in the past we've covered the effects on babies, we've covered the effects on horses, we've talked about all the matters relating to litigation. There was a teleconference dedicated to folks getting trained on how just to be a better advocate, by understanding the political field and how to strategize. And that was the training from the Center for Self-Governance. We've had Dr. Paul Conant coming to tell us about the psychology of debating, all the craziness and how to keep your head above water and argue our position. And we've had his son Michael Conant presenting on the hidden history, the real smoking gun and memos that show that evidence of harm was suppressed back in the early days. So these are the topics that we've had so far. We've covered Declan Waugh's work in Ireland, and Aisling Fitzgibbon, of course, from Ireland as well. And we even had the folks from the Portland campaign, the Victorious campaign in Portland, come to teach us a few things about messaging and what it was like to be on that campaign. So these are the topics we've covered so far. Any other ideas, Richard or anyone?
Well, it'd be nice to get the information out that the CDC keeps changing. For example, I've been complaining to them for years about the MCL that the EPA uses for safety of fluoride only comes from natural calcium fluoride. They don't have one for the industrial fluoride lacking calcium. And over the years, they've written back and yelled at me, and they keep saying, oh, there's no difference. But I've noticed their current website has dropped that claim now, and they actually are now calling for research on the difference between natural calcium fluoride and the fluoride that they use to fluoridate the water. They're calling for research. But I mean, that's an open admission that they don't even know what they're doing. You're supposed to know this stuff ahead of time before you start treating people. You don't do it after. Stuff like that would be nice to expose.
It's Dr.
But I don't know who. I don't know who would be in a position. I don't know if there's anybody at the CDC who would be able to do something like that. But the other thing is there's only 0.016 part per million fluoride in the saliva when you drink the fluoridated water, which can't affect teeth topically at all. And when I pose that to the CDC, they keep saying, well, we don't know the answer to that problem. I mean, it's something that obvious, but they still can't come to grips with the fact that they're recommending something that they don't even know the basics about. And the CDC is the main driving force for all the state public health departments that force it into the water. I mean, that's the lion's den right there. But I don't know how to present it on your teleconference. You know, who would be somebody? Maybe somebody at the CDC might see the ridiculousness of all this right in the oral health division. But it seems like in order to work there, you have to sign a promise in blood. You know, you have to support water fluoridation. But the latest thing I read from dentists from the CDC now is that, oh well, it still works only topically. We know that, and they admit that the level in the saliva is only 0.016, but they say it still adds to the saliva to the effect by incorporating into the plaque that's on your teeth. And then that comes out when you eat sugar, and then it helps fight the bacteria. So it adds to the fluoride from the toothpaste that also gets into your plaque. But that's ridiculous because dentists are always telling you to keep the plaque off your teeth. It's not to be used as a place to reservoir fluoride to fight cavities.
God.
But that's what they're actually saying now. These dentists in
they're grasping
publications.
at straws.
Yeah, I mean, so all this stuff has changed so much from the CDC, their storyline, but it's all holding on to the idea that the water somehow affects cavities, but they don't know how, and they just keep inventing more and more ideas for how it works when it doesn't even work. So even the topical stuff, especially from fluoride water, is phony. But I don't know the best way to do it on a teleconference. Because a lot of people get up in arms about that, and they'll just say, don't go into the topical stuff. But, topical from fluoridated water is absolutely useless. Even toothpaste, but that's where, they would really get mad if you said that.
This brings to my thought a possible another couple of people. They've already been nicely interviewed on Mercola, and those interviews are available online, so maybe it's a little redundant, but maybe, on the other hand, they could go more into one topic with us. The minimally invasive dentistry and ozone dentistry and so forth people, Dr. Tim Rainey, especially in Houston, who's been working with a low-income community and doing all ozone dentistry, which works out to entirely preventive, and the costs, the quality of dental health has gone up phenomenally with practically no cost at all, with all of these inner city kids who otherwise wouldn't be getting dental care at all. His work is exciting in that regard. Carol van der Stop is a dental hygienist who goes into a lot of detail about and education for people's own teeth self-care. And I'm not so sure that she would be succinct enough, especially with only audio. But it seems like it would be good to start bringing out some of the people who are working for the, all the time we get people who say, well, if we can't use fluoride, what should we be doing? The people who are bringing out good things to do. Indeed, much better things to do, but that's obvious to us who know how horrible fluoride is. For people who don't know that, especially the low-cost aspect of the ozone dentistry, etc., could still be exciting to bring out.
Very good. Yes, all the alternatives. Flossing and brushing, or xylitol, or ozone, or...
Yeah, and people that really have a lot of people that have gingivitis and gums that get infected really easily. Some people are really susceptible to that. The best way to handle it is just turn on a boiling pot of steam and open your mouth and let it float into your mouth for about a half an hour, a couple of days a week. It fixes it all. And so it's incredible. Just a simple thing like that.
Presumably not fluoridated water.
No, that doesn't do anything.
No, but I mean the steam.
Oh, yeah. Well, the fluoride wouldn't come up from fluoridated water anyway. Only the steam would come up when you boil it.
Are you sure? Because I've understood that with distillation, some of the fluoride goes up and comes down again.
No, no, you can distill water and have no fluoride in the product. The sodium fluoride stays behind as a solid. It comes down as a white powder and stays in the container.
Seriously, all of
I have
it?
pictures of it. I published pictures of it on a book that I wrote on lulu.com.
I know.
I did it with a gallon of water here.
Okay.
No, nothing. No. You wouldn't be able to detect it. It'd be so small, if any. But that's what distilled water really is. It's just the steam that comes from boiling water. That's the distilled water.
So how come my
sodium fluoride is a chemical that you can put in a jar. It's a white powder. It's a solid.
And hydrofluorosilicic acid?
Well, that ends up being the same similar thing. The only thing different between sodium fluoride and fluosilicic is the contaminants, the extra heavy metals and stuff, plus the silicic acid. Because when they fluoridate water with fluosilicic, they have to add caustic soda, the Drano, the sodium hydroxide, to make the pH not go down. So it ends up being exactly the same sodium fluoride amount as if you'd use sodium fluoride, except it has the extra contaminants and the silicic acid. But when you boil the diluted stuff down, all those solids stay behind. That's how they make distilled water. You take any junky water and just boil it, and pure water comes out. There's things like ethanol that would go over with it, but that's not our worry.
What happens when we boil? For instance, for a long time I couldn't do stainless steel cooking pots even to boil water because I was having trouble with the nickel. Now, would you say that's purely an energy field thing?
Well, nickel's a pretty heavy metal, and it's just not going to come up with the steam.
Well, okay.
The problem,
the water.
Yeah, the water that you boil and it doesn't go up as steam, that's going to be enriched in the fluoride and everything else. That'll get more concentrated.
Okay.
But I'm just talking about the steam that you expose into your mouth. Let it boil up into your mouth. You don't have any of the chemicals in the steam. Fortunately, it's like that's God's way of getting pure water from the ocean. The ocean has tons of chemicals in it, but when the sun vaporizes it, it comes up as pure water. That turns into pure snow, pure drinking water. That's how it works in nature.
So when we're warned not to breathe in the shower, that's purely about chlorine, not about fluoride? No,
that's not really boiled water with steam, so that's different. If you're inhaling the spray, you're inhaling the actual water with the chemicals in it. That's why, like kids with autism, they can be really sensitive to fluoridated water showers.
So vapor is stronger than spray.
Well, the spray really is the water that's just sprayed as a little droplet. When you boil it on a pan and it's way hotter than a shower, it gets it to boiling temperatures, then the individual water molecules come up as gas. The steam is a gas, and it's just pure water. It's no, pure steam doesn't have the chemicals in it.
That's a really interesting distinction. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah.
Hey, Alli, this is Clint. I got some questions for you.
Sure.
So is it clear? Is it true that you said you're a commissioner on the water board in Seattle?
No, I'm with a very small district located halfway between Seattle and Tacoma. Okay. Very small, 785 connections, 4 wells, surrounded on 3 sides with the water district that buys water from Seattle, so they have to top it with fluoride, and they do use chlorine. And So I cannot use the name of my water district that I represent, which is King County Water District 54, in my fluoride activism, because I am in no way representing the water district, but I can say I am a water commissioner.
Wow, okay. So you're like a little island, a little fluoride-free island there.
Yeah, and I know what it's like to be attacked by the Department of Health. We had a situation that was from poor testing from a former employee, and on bad public policy, he did 2 bad tests. One came up with E. coli in the spigot. The other came up with coliform in the spigot. Board of Health said, oh, that's 2 violations, and they went public fear-mongering that we had E. coli in the water, and it sent us into pure hell. We are still going through it, and as a result, they have forced us to spend into close to $100,000 to install 2 chlorination stations, one on each of our reservoirs, and jump through their hoops until we can stop the chlorination of the water. We were established in 1935. We're well water. We don't need chlorine. We've never had fluoride. So, yeah, I know the hell. I will no longer speak to any government agency as such. They just show up to get their paycheck, their health care, their lifestyle, to promote public policy that doesn't serve us well.
I just wonder if those same people know about Seattle's ongoing violation with lead. They have 62 ppb lead up there in their product water from the facility, even before it goes into lead lines at homes.
James Deal has really been looking into that one and talking about that one. You know James.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
He was on one of our previous teleconferences related to litigation.
Yeah. He's done some really good work about Seattle schools and lead in the pipes.
Yeah, well, I just noticed that even the water quality report from Seattle out of their facility it exceeds the EPA's MCL for lead. I was shocked the other day when I saw that. I thought it was only after it drained into people's homes with the old lead plumbing, but the facility itself is exceeding the EPA's limit. But where are all these people that were hounding you? Why aren't they hounding that?
I don't know. They don't like us, but and the district around us we get along fine with. If I go dead, it's because my battery's dead. And they don't want to take us over. And the city won't. It's just leave us alone. Let us do what we're here to do. But it's all in the big thing of right now. They are inventorying every Class A system, B system, private well, any source of water in the state of Washington, and they are trying to take control over all of our water.
Mm-hmm.
It's going on everywhere.
Well, I noticed down here. I went to the place where I haul my drinking water from because I don't drink the fluoridated water. I haul it from a well that's in Carlsbad. It's a state historic landmark because of the water is so pure. Well, anyway, the FDA, turns out, I finally talked to the owner. He said that the FDA officials come to his place once a week to make sure the vending machines and everything and the water tests out clean, blah, blah, blah. This is the FDA, who supposedly only monitors bottled water. That's not the case. They're monitoring this water that the public goes up and buys out of a vending machine with their own containers. They monitor it once a week, and it's the cleanest water in the state. There's no fluoride, there's no arsenic, nothing in there. But they come out every week, still anyway, on a regular basis, to hound these people. This is the FDA. So I'm going to send that to the people that are reviewing the ban petition. Don't tell me the FDA is not interested in water that's being consumed by the public, and it's only bottled water. So I'm writing that one now. And a newspaper in San Diego wants to publish this little expose as well. So,
do you know if San Diego's a member of the ICLEI?
I don't know. What's that?
Do you know what the ICLEI is?
No.
It's the International Council on Local Environmental Issues. Initiatives. Seattle is a member of it. We have almost 30 cities, and I don't know how many counties here in the state of Washington that are a member of it. And the ICLEI is what they're basing our growth management plans on. So do a little research and find out if your city or your county, I know King County is a member, and this is what's driving a lot of our property and land rights. And, I watched the bills in Olympia, and, of course, we have a big thing up here. They're calling it the salmon crisis. But, no, it's a land and water rights issue.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I hate to be the bearer about this, but the ICLEI is the divisional plan of the major operating plan, which is the UN Agenda 21.
Okay.
So you can go to UN Agenda, Democrats Against UNAgenda21.com. Rosa Corey's website. She's a Democrat. That's why it's Democrats. But she wrote Behind the Green Mass, the book on that. It's just incredible. So, and actually, we delivered her book to every congressman and senator in our state capital over a year ago, April. Haven't heard a word from any of them. Are you still there?
So are you an elected position, Alli?
Yes, I am in my second 6-year term as a water commissioner, and my term expires at midnight January 1st, December 31st, 2015, so 2016.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure I'm going to run.
The fluoridation issue has it come up in your election at all?
What? No, No, they totally dismissed me. I've been in front of the Board of Health numerous times, even before this issue with the Water District and the Board of Health. They carry out this policy because their health care, their paycheck, their lifestyle depends on it. Mm-hmm. And they're afraid of the liability if they come out and speak against it. Their career is ruined. They're shot.
Yeah.
I've noticed that too down here. Anybody who doesn't want fluoride, they don't want you to know that. and the cities that aren't going to fluoridate because of the horses, they talk to me in private that way, but they're not going to announce that to the public. They're just not going to do it, but they don't want people to know that they're the holdup for why it's not being fluoridated.
Look what happened to Bill Hirzy. Look what happened to Phyllis Mullenix.
Right.
Yeah.
Nothing changes. It just gets more so.
And the zoo is the same way down here. They don't want to even mention the F word. Nothing. But yet they're switching to RO water and clean water for all the animals that are fluoride sensitive. They're doing all that, and I watch them do it, but they don't want any mention of the F word.
No, and here's an interesting thing. I have 11 years history with the Seattle Aquarium as a volunteer, as a beach naturalist, and a docent at the aquarium. And when I was at the aquarium in our Pacific Coral exhibit, somebody kicked a valve and allowed Seattle water into that tank. Fortunately, it was on a Saturday morning. There were plenty of people there, but not a lot of visitors, but employees. And they realized something was going on because all of a sudden the fish started dying. Our wonderful new black-tip sharks, 3 of them, dead. Mm-hmm. When Seattle water was let into that tank. They just kind of shoved that under the rug and didn't say anything about why the Seattle water killed them all. Oh, it's just not the kind of water they're supposed to have. Yeah. It was.
I love that
down here.
What's the best water we're supposed to have? As human beings, if we had an unlimited supply of resources to bring the best water to your kitchen and bathroom every day. Well, I sometimes wonder, because we're so busy trying to get the fluoride out, it's also a good idea to spend some time thinking about what is the optimum water we could possibly create, and what technologies do we know of that could bring to our kitchens exactly what our body wants and needs.
Yeah, well, it's pretty frightening. I'm not at all Native American, but I've been embraced by the Sioux Nation and given a name. I'm Minnie Naja Win, the water spirit woman. But I remember when I was a child, I'm 67 years old now, but I grew up in Utah and fishing in the foothills, and I remember when we could drink out of every stream, river, and lake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The only reason we have great water here that we can haul for drinking is because the aquifer is 1,700 feet deep, and it comes from 60 miles away. It takes 9,000 years for the water to come from the snow-capped mountains under the ground. It's covered by a huge slab of granite, so it's protected, and it comes out towards the ocean, right at the shoreline, and that's where this guy in 1882 drilled a well. And it's been operating for the best fresh water in the state, they argue, ever since. And so that's why it's a state historic landmark. And I finally was allowed permission to see. The owners are really secretive, but just a couple days ago I was allowed to see the chemical analysis that an environmental lab did on the water. And there's no contaminants whatsoever in that water, nothing detectable. You know, there's calcium and magnesium sulfates and the chloride salts, and that's it. No fluoride, no natural fluoride, no natural arsenic, nothing like that. Completely clean water. And so that's why I'm glad I've been hauling it here since 2007 when LA started fluoridating. So I finally wrote a little article for the newspaper down in San Diego to describe this great water. And when you come visit this town, to please visit this spa that has this water. And I described it all. But then, I also put in there, that the city water right next door in the drinking fountain has all, and I listed the Carlsbad Water Quality Report contaminant listings, and I just put them all in there. Show people the difference. Here's one on this side of the street. Here's one on this side of the street. So go here.
Yeah, I love the focus you have, Richard, on the chemical analysis. I've almost, after talking with you, I imagined whole volunteer armies of people testing the water, so that we don't have to rely on what the government says first and foremost, but then just in general for people to get curious about what is in this, why aren't people more curious about their water? Why don't people want to know what's in it and how much, and isn't there a better way? Is there a better way?
Yeah,
most
people still try
something, they'll try to improve it. They'll say, okay, is this really the best possible water we could do?
Yeah, they just have other concerns that they think are more important because they think the government is still basically okay in regulating it. That's most of the people down here think that.
Hey, Richard.
But they don't get.
Do you?
I pleaded with the. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I pleaded with the Metropolitan Water District in one of the letters I wrote because this church that I go to, these old people, it just bugs me that they sit there and drink city water in the coffee fellowship. They're always drinking, for hours at a time talking, and it's all city water that they use to make the coffee because they can't afford to buy the bottled water. But all the pastors and the people in the church that work there, they're all drinking the same water I do from Carlsbad, the hauled stuff. And it just bugs the heck out of me. And so I've been pleading with Metropolitan to stop adding the fluosilicic for these old people. They're the ones who don't need it at all. They already are getting Alzheimer's or dementia. They're getting slower and slower. I know these people really well, these old people. I can't stand that they're drinking this garbage. I mean, I'm just literally begging the LA to stop fluoridating. And they have lowered it to 0.5 without notifying the public. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what they're doing. But they lowered it to 0.5. And then their lawyer wrote me a letter telling me why they don't think they need a EPA permit to do the discharges. But then I responded back and told them, no, this is what the law says. And then they stopped writing. And that's where we are right now.
They're 0.5 now for sure? You measured it? It's consistent?
Oh, yeah. It's been that way for about 5 months. I've measured it, and I've had 2 other people with fluoride electrodes of different brands, and they're also coming up with 0.5.
Well, that's
been this way for months.
Itself.
I know. Well, I wrote to them about that.
That's probably the lowest any municipality's got.
Yeah, for intentionally fluoridating, yeah.
Yeah.
I think what it is, if you read the literature from the FDA on who's allowed to take fluoride tablets, you have to have drinking water below 0.6 if you want to take fluoride tablets.
I see.
Like Olivenane over here, they're really freaked out about the fact that they're being pharmacists now by fluoridating water. But they didn't want the dirty fluosilicic. They used what they think is the clean sodium fluoride, and that was great. But they realized that sodium fluoride is a medicine that people take in tablet form only when the water is below 0.6. It could be a coincidence, but maybe that's why everybody's down here at 0.5. I don't know. They're just not telling anyone. It's very strange. I'm sure they're sick of me.
Well, Dr. Hirzy's contention is that they're just trying to save face and avoid liability after knowingly fibbed for so many years, and that's really the main motivator why they're so clamped down and so cagey and weird. And of course, there's industry, obviously, and we can't ignore industry pressure. But assuming that the officials do have some spine and could make a change, would make a change if they somehow could back out gracefully. So I see part of our job is to help them back out gracefully. If that will make the difference, if they want to bring it down to be like 0.005 or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't send you yet the last letter I wrote to Metropolitan, which was along those lines. I gave them an out, a really easy out, and that is, even though the state law says this and that, mandatory this and that, it has a clause in there, and I copied the new one from the California Department of Public Health. They have a new version of it, so I copied it verbatim and sent it to them, and that's their out. They don't have to fluoridate. I sent them a little passage in the law, in the mandatory fluoridation law, for all the people, all the cities that want to exempt themselves. This is all you need, and LA fits that model because they're same with San Diego. They've run out of the early money, and now they're getting ready to charge the ratepayers. And you can't charge the ratepayers legally in California, and so they're trying to cover it up. So I'm just giving them an out that I know you're trying to follow state law, but this is also in the state law that if you just don't have the funds, you don't have to, and so that's your out. And then the other thing is California has a state law that says you can't have the public health goal for lead is only 0.2 ppb, 0.2. Mm-hmm. The water already is 1.1 just from the stuff that's in the fluosilicic. So I told them, if you really want to follow the state law that you say you're following for mandatory fluoridation, well, let's be consistent and follow the state law where the public health goal, and they're serious about these goals. They want the lead to be below 0.2. So if we're going to follow that public health goal stated goal, well, then we can't fluoridate anymore because Mullenix just proved that adds 1.1. So if we're going to get this public health goal in gear, there's no way to add the lead that goes along with fluoridation. You're going to have to think of another way to fluoridate. And so I sent all that in a letter too.
Don't you encounter that there are then block grants or Delta Dental or stuff like that providing the funds?
Well, the Delta Dental, usually what they'll do is they'll just get a city started on it and they think hooked on it. And then they let the city fund for themselves to get money after that. That's what's been going on, and they signed this extortion contract like Sacramento did. Sacramento signed a contract to do it for 10 years, or otherwise they agreed they'd have to give that startup money back. Of course, the money's already spent, but they don't have to worry about that agreement. That's just extortion. It's illegal. You can't make. You can't make a person buy a product for 10 years if you find out the product was falsely advertised. Because for one thing, it doesn't decrease cavities when you eat it. And the other thing, it has other contaminants that they didn't tell you about. So there's no such deal that is legally binding. So Sacramento doesn't have to fluoridate for 10 years, even though they signed an agreement to.
Well, what about the block grants, the federal block grants? Are they only startup money?
Well, those, yeah. If you get a federal block grant, then it's harder for a city in California to stop fluoridating. It's a lot harder.
I would think so.
But LA and San Diego don't have such grants. They don't have them.
Well, that's no guarantee that they wouldn't get it.
That's true. Somebody could run around and scramble around and see that LA's about ready to stop fluoridating, and then suddenly money's found. I realize that. But it sure is a mess. You know, you'd think they would just want to wash their hands of the whole mess and say, heck with it, because there's nothing stable. There's no funding source that's stable.
And I'm a little curious also because we keep hearing that the supply in the U.S. is not meeting the demand and we're having to buy it from China now. And that kind of takes away the incentive for, hey, we've got to get rid of this waste that's piling up. There's still the business about they'll lose face and everybody will sue them. But the story about disposing of waste, I'd like to know more about where that shakes out.
Yeah, well, like I was telling Dr. Hirzy, I mean, just because Rebecca Hanmer wrote an opinion letter that, you know, Florida selling it to water districts could be a great way to get rid of hazardous waste, just because she's an EPA official with that opinion, that doesn't change the Safe Drinking Water Act or the Clean Water Act. It doesn't invalidate any of it, and it doesn't represent official EPA mandated policy. It's just her opinion. So it doesn't really mean anything, even though everybody kowtows to that letter. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just a lady that was in there for a while. She wrote a dumb letter. It has nothing to do with an official congressionally approved statute, which is the Safe Drinking Water Act. You can't violate a congressional statute with a little opinion letter. But yet the EPA thinks, the people that are there think that it overrides it. It's just amazing.
If it's convenient to do so.
It's much easier just to let it ride. Yeah.
Are you using, James said you had an X-Tech 700 meter. Is that what you're using?
No, I have a Lamont Instruments from Maryland, a fluoride electrode.
Okay. I'm hoping I've been waiting a long time for something that would be A, affordable in money, and B, portable. And
mine's portable. Well, it used to be only $200, but now they're over $300. But I have a couple of them.
Well, that's kind of comparable to the X-Tech thingy, but I got an X-Tech thingy, and then it turns out to have all kinds of extra media requirements and stuff that I haven't gotten over the hump with yet. And you said that there were two other people who had different electrodes. Do you have any idea what they are?
One of them he got for only $120, I think. But it's functioning, and everything else is exactly the same as mine. It just has a different color on the outside, and I don't remember the name, but it obviously is the same exact meter manufacturer as mine. And so I'd have to ask him what it was again. It might have been the one you just mentioned, because it was a portable one, and you just hold it in one hand. It's a vertical, like a long shape.
Yes, about 8 inches long.
Yeah. I'm sure it's fine. All you need from it really is a sodium chloride standard solution that you can calibrate it with. And then you buy the little pills, the potassium nitrate pills, you have to dump in each time you do an assay.
Okay, that does sound like the same kind of setup.
Yeah. That's what the engineers had to do in order to get a ppm valid reading. Because some waters would have a lot of calcium, some water would be soft, and it would affect the ability of the meter to sense the fluoride. So what they did is they decided they couldn't get rid of the hardness of the water, so they instead just saturated it all with potassium nitrate. And then the ionic strength effect is already accounted for, and they calibrated it electronically in the meter. So that was actually a pretty brilliant idea to get around the problem. And then the only other thing to worry about is make sure your water is not hot. If it's hot water, it'll read a higher level. You have to have it like room temperature. That's why people are checking these swimming pools now, and they're going, "Oh, look at this outlandish amount of fluoride." Well, I have to have them cool the pool water back down to see what it really is.
Okay, that's a good calibration. Thank you very much. I'll fool with it some more.
So yeah, I have 2 more letters to write to the FDA, and then I'm going to write to Hirzy, see if he'll write just that one little sentence to the FDA. I think that'll be a big help. That the EPA does not have the authority or the ability to monitor the effectiveness of the fluoridation on dental caries, And so then the FDA will be forced into realizing that the EPA never really had any intention of monitoring the fluoridation program for the country, and it's not regulated by anyone, and it's the FDA that has the sole authority for it. I mean, I've been saying it for years, but to hear it from Hirzy, that would be great.
It would be fabulous.
Yeah.
Back to the meter a sec.
Yeah.
When you say you have to use both of these calibration things each time, does that mean each time even on the same water source? If you don't change to another water source,
I found these meters. They have these meters now, the modern ones now. I only have to calibrate my meter maybe once a month. I do it more regular than that anyway, but I wouldn't really have to. They're really stable unless you were to drop it on a sidewalk or something. They stay really stable. It's amazing nowadays. In the old days, you have to calibrate it before and after every reading. But now if you calibrate it once and it reads 1.00 in a 1.00 standard, then it's calibrated and that's it. And it'll last for weeks that way without ever having to do that again. And you can measure as many samples as you want for a couple of weeks before you recalibrate the meter, as long as you don't drop it or something.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
And that's true with both the solution and the tablets.
Well, the solution, when you first calibrate it with the sodium fluoride standard, you also put the potassium nitrate tablet in there when you're doing it, and then that's your calibration fluid, and you just calibrate the meter with that. Then take it out, and then use it all you want to measure your water samples, and you don't have to worry about the calibration anymore. But you do add the pill every time you do another sample. Every time you add a sample that you're measuring, you have to add another potassium nitrate pill.
Every time.
And then maybe after a couple. Yeah, and then a couple weeks later, you can double check the calibration again. Unless you're doing some really serious thing that you're really freaked out about possibly being at all off, that maybe you were going to give to the city or some testimony or something.
Right.
Usually calibrating once every couple of weeks is fine.
Okay, that's a
But for something serious, something really serious, yeah, you can calibrate it before and after your reading if you're really worried. And then, do you know how to dilute the standard down to be 1 part per million? Because they usually sell a bottle, it's 1,000. And if you take a quarter teaspoon of that and dilute it into a 1 liter, cookware container, then that's 1 part per million. That's if you didn't have any pipettes or any scientific gear. That's how you get a 1.0 part per million standard easily.
Thank you. That sounds really good to know. I'm making notes furiously. Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. Alli, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Hi.
Hi.
So months ago, I think James said I should bring the meter along to a meeting. Well, maybe I can get this up and everybody can be alerted to bring their samples to the meeting if they want. Are you not required to use equipment to check as a commissioner?
What do you mean equipment to check?
To check water, anything.
Oh yes, we do several tests every month. Several.
But not normally fluoride because you're not fluoridating.
Well, we show 0 fluoride.
You show 0 fluoride. So I would love to know more, and we don't need to do it on everybody else's time, but I'd love to know more about what equipment you use to show 0 fluoride.
We send it to a lab.
Oh, okay.
We take samples and we send it to a lab.
Okay, right.
So we don't do the testing. We just take the samples.
Right.
So, Alli, more questions about you and your role as a commissioner, may I?
Sure.
Because I'm fascinated by. I went to a Marin Water District meeting, several actually, the last of which was dedicated to the fluoridation question, and the format was such that the commissioners were able to respond to us, whereas before comments were just one directional. Thank you for sharing like that. So anyway, and I've heard other stories that just confirm over and over again that commissioners are just a stone wall. And so all of us activists, I think, would be served by understanding the mentality of what all the considerations a commissioner has, and why fluoridation isn't number one on their list, and why would they doubt, or why would they avoid the precautionary principle? So it's just a big mystery for a lot of people out there. So, trying to estimate, trying to guess at their motivations and what really makes them tick from very sparse, interactions.
Paycheck, health care.
You said that right.
They just get a stipend, but then they have to go up against the city, and I know it's very difficult. I took the fluoride issue to the Washington Association of Sewer and Water Districts, where we have something like 87 members out of 183 districts or something like that, and but not only 18 of them were fluoridated, so they told me it wasn't an issue within the district, and that was not something, or within the association, not something they dealt with. But my last presentation, which I had gone for several months without making a statement during public comment, I had several people come up to me and say, "Alli, thank you for doing what you're doing." And it's like, well, why don't you help me do it then? Stop the water fluoridation in your district. So they don't want to do it. No, we don't want to spend that money, but we're stuck. They're stuck. So, but like I say, I just ask them to give me the information that shows it is safe and effective, because we see that it's not. And until you, the CDC, can show us as many documents as we can see at Fluoride Action Network that it's safe and effective, we'll put it in the water. But until you can show us something, we're going to stop. To me, that's their out. And that we can't afford to do this, especially when we don't really know what it is. So, it's really quite a conundrum.
Wow,
yeah,
thank you. That really helps.
Yeah, I think what Clint was getting at, it really touched a bone here, too, because the 2 times that I've had some success with water district officials, and they agreed with me and said that they don't want to fluoridate, what happened is they didn't want to lift a finger to help oppose it, because they didn't want to go against the other people on the water boards, and instead they physically actually quit and left, and they took jobs somewhere else.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
They quit because their conscience wouldn't allow them to continue?
That's my guess, yeah. And they didn't want to put up a fight. They didn't want to be the one to be the outcast and put up this giant fight for the rest of their life, and they just left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's the story of our general manager. He worked for a district where he had to put it in, and he didn't wear anything but gloves. They didn't give him any protective gear.
Macho man.
Yeah, well, he's he loves being in our district because doesn't have to deal with it.
Wow.
Yeah. No, let me tell you, the employees, they don't want to do it, but it's part of their job. They have to do it, even though they don't want to do it because it's wrong. They're stuck. It's their job.
Oh yeah, there is one person down here in our town that is keeps encouraging me to keep fighting, and he works for the water district. He's one of their chief engineers, but he keeps it all quiet. He doesn't say a word because he doesn't want to lose his job.
Mm-hmm.
And he keeps saying he has to pay his bills. He has no choice. Yeah, he said he has to pay his bills. He has to pay his bills. He has no choice. And there's nothing he can do, but he just keeps hoping that I can get it stopped. He's putting it all on me to get it stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually gets kind of perturbed if I'm not working hard enough.
Well, he is in a predicament. Yeah. I mean, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, look at me. I'm the one water commissioner who doesn't have fluoride, and a lot of them tell me, "Thank you, keep doing it."
Mm-hmm.
But my other two commissioners say Alli, they told me not to use the water district name because I'm not representing our water district in my activities. So,
who told you that?
My other two commissioners that I sit on the board with.
So exactly what are they referring to? If you were to introduce yourself on a teleconference, or if you should be interviewed by the press? I mean, what are they specifically talking about? Not saying the name.
Well, they don't want any light shined on the district, and they just say that those activities are separate from your duties as a water commissioner. So you can't use us as your vehicle to travel through your campaign or against fluoride.
Alli, did that come up after the whole debacle about the coliform or before?
Before.
Before. That's what I kind of.
When that thing about the coliform came up, I had Board of Health put a gag order on me because it was bad employee testing, and he threatened to sue the water district for wrongful termination. They wouldn't let me say, it was only in the spigot. It was never in the water. I was gagged. I could not discuss it.
Gagged because you're a penalty of threat of penalty?
Yeah, of being taken out of my position.
Mm-hmm.
And they could put charges against me. Or,
yeah, because you're implying you're implying the water's not fully healthy, and they don't want to hear that. That's their main modus operandi is they deliver healthy water to everybody.
Yeah. So at that point, I just backed off and said, I've had enough. I will not speak to these people that are carrying out bad public policy. Yeah, the moment came to me when I'm sitting around a table from Board of Health in Seattle, Board of Health in the state of Washington, city officials, all these people around the table, and realized that myself, one of my commissioners, and our attorney, we were the only three at that table whose paycheck, health care, and lifestyle did not depend on us sitting at this table doing what these people are doing, because it should have never happened. They shut down 39 food services, put out a boil water, didn't put out the description. We had to field over 1,000 phone calls, people calling up and saying, do I need to boil my water? Well, where do you live? I live on Queen Anne Hill. No, you're not in Water District 54. I was shocked to see how many people don't have a clue where their water comes from.
Yeah. Okay. And you're the brave one.
Indeed.
Yeah, because I'm the lone vote that stood up against the city and stood up against the water district, and I was just the lone vote. So I've lost on 2 or 3 things that I didn't think was benefiting the people. One of them is costing my ratepayers $1.6 million over the next 20 years. So, yeah. Now we have to spend almost $100,000 of our ratepayers' money to put chlorination systems in that we don't need.
Mm-hmm.
So they've already attacked me, attacked my water district. And some people think, Alli, do you think that's why they did that? Well, no, because when you go back and you look at the laws that have been passed in the public policy, and 2 violations, even though they were 2 separate tests, and they had nothing to do, it was not in the system, it was only in the tests, because he didn't use the proper sanitation. There was no Clorox in the bottle for sanitization. Yeah, no, I see how they do what they do. Just like Dr. Hirzy does. I mean, he's just like walking through. Why? Why? Why do they do this?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And what's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back is my question. What is it going to be?
I don't know. I hope it's the FDA still to handle it for everybody.
That would be glorious.
But those chemists up at Morgan Hill, where my brother lives, they just got tired of dumping it into the water, and they stopped They didn't order anymore because they didn't want to do it anymore, and their supervisor didn't care. So Morgan Hill is listed as a fluoridated city, but it hasn't been fluoridated in 12 years. The chemist doesn't want to dump it in. So little things like that happen here and there.
Wow. Morgan Hill.
Well, it blows me away because we have such aging pipes. We need to replace our infrastructures. We need to do all this stuff, and yet, City of Seattle, they're spending $350,000 a year on fluoride. Do you realize how many pipes they could replace with that? So it's an issue there, plus the wear and tear on the existing pipes of pushing that through the water.
Yeah.
So, and our public trust funds are running out. Our revolving water, it's hard to get money now to do these upgrades.
Mm-hmm.
And you're seeing pipes burst all over the place. So
I've also been working. Yeah, go ahead.
I just don't understand why the people in charge at these water districts don't say, wait a minute, let's rethink this. What's happening here? Our pipes are diminishing. Yeah, I don't get it. It's to me, it's a no-brainer. But for those other people, you just, can't threaten their paycheck, their health care, and their lifestyle. Yeah, I'm like Paul Conant. Once he opened my eyes about it, I thought, I'll just go talk to people and we'll get this job done. Well, he got it done in 7.5 years. I'm 2006. It'll be 8 years for me. It was 8 years for me in May that I've been trying to do it here in the state of Washington.
Mm-hmm.
The nice thing about it is all you wonderful people that I've met along the way, and Clint, like the people you have brought forward. I mean, this education has been so valuable.
Yes.
And helped to lift me up and go through and go forward and speak like an authority. Paul says I'm one of his A+ students. That's because I named him my self-appointed professor.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, well, Dr. Bill Hirzy is also now one of my self-appointed professors. Pretty soon I'll have my PhD.
Yeah.
Clint, you're really education. I think, Clint, your talent is that you're not judgmental about any of it. You don't get upset with people, even if they're totally on the wrong side of things. You just state the facts very calmly, and everything's really cool the way you organize this teleconference all the time.
It is. It's wonderful.
Well, thanks. That acknowledgement, the feedback's important to me. I have consciously chosen to be chill, to let the presenters shine, and it's not my job to have an opinion. My big opinion is that we need to do it together. So being together is part of that. I know that there's a lot of information that needs to be. You have to have a PhD in a way. So let's not underestimate the education, and further, the stories of people's success and failures basically speak for themselves. They're an education in themselves, and so I trust that people will take from the stories what they need at the time wherever they find themselves in the battle.
Yeah.
So thank you for the acknowledgement.
Yeah, and I have a separate little battle going on with the city of Escondido, because they started fluoridating in Southern California in 2005, even before LA did. And but their thing is they just assume that fluoridation is okay. But every time I write to them, I see little cracks in their armor, and they're always weaseling around trying to come up with excuses. But the last thing I pointed out, I happened to notice, I study these water quality reports all the time, and I didn't notice until the other day, so I wrote him another letter, that if you look at the last 10 years for Escondido's water, in 2004, before they started fluoridating, the lead level was not detectable in all of their samples. Mm-hmm. They did 90 samples or so throughout the year, and there was 0 detectable lead. After fluoridation started, suddenly they changed it, and they said, well, the lead is less than 5 ppb. And it's been that way ever since fluoridation has been going on. So I pointed that out and said, well, just because it's less than the EPA's MCL, it is less than 5 ppb, it's nothing to brag and be happy and prideful about, because it used to be you had no detectable lead at all. But after you started fluoridating, and you now have lead. So people do have lead exposure now they didn't have before, and the public health goal for lead is only 0.2. So being less than 5 is nothing to brag about. The new public health goal is 0.2. So, I keep whittling away in different ways in the different water districts because they all have different personalities and different situations. Mm-hmm. If I had sent that letter to LA, they wouldn't care because there's natural contaminant in the lead from unknown places that's already, but it's not like Escondido where there wasn't any before fluoridation started. So it's more dramatic there. All these water districts are all different.
Yeah, but I think every single water district should have pointed out to them the disclaimer and that they have the liability, that all the way down the line from the phosphate fertilizer, it's passed on to them, the end user.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I learned from the LA Water Board. They know that they have liability. They signed to accept all liability and to eliminate any liability from the supplier. They signed that agreement in 2007. They just took all the liability.
Well, they didn't have to take it. It was already put on them. So they just said they acknowledged they were taking it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, isn't that the way that's the way the capitalist works, is that you get the government and thereby the taxpayers to take on the liabilities and the risks, whereas you get to just have all the upside for yourself. Externalizing the cost and risk is a common practice in industry today and for a long time,
Yeah, and come to think of it, that only proves the point, which is that these suppliers are really nervous about litigation. They don't want to be litigated. So I'm convinced that all it would take was just a simple letter of inquiry from the FDA to one of these suppliers, and they would run like crazy and scatter, and we wouldn't have fluoridation anymore. One little letter from the FDA, that's all I'm hoping from them, to one supplier, and it would end.
Yeah. Yeah, their business model relies on offloading the toxin itself, the chemicals themselves, as well as the risk, liability.
Yeah.
They can't operate they wouldn't be profitable without that.
I wonder if this thing that's going on about the execution chemicals, if the law that's operating there is called in here, or if it could easily be called in.
I don't know much about that law, but it's true that they have. I'm sure there's some laws that apply to both. Could apply to both.
Well, somebody on death row is suing to get to be put in touch with the company that makes the chemical they're going to use to kill him, and in order that he can be sure that it gets used properly. And the law, this is going through the court now, the law is saying that the company is entitled to not be identified because it would incur so much hostility. And I would not be surprised if somebody would invoke a similar law about this, or the same law. I don't know if it applies only to death row situations.
I don't know. I mean, the sad thing is they're already just so flouting so many federal water laws that they're ignoring already. It just blows my mind how the EPA can just ignore the main laws that it's supposed to operate under. You know, the Clean Water Act, they're supposed to have a permit to discharge an EPA-regulated pollutant at any concentration into water, but the water districts don't have the permit. But then the EPA doesn't force them to get the permit. It's just like nobody does anything. Nobody's honoring it.
They're all revolving door situations, so it shouldn't surprise us. I do want to celebrate one thing. It was fascinating to me to hear that Dr. Hirzy started out working for Monsanto. So he is, in effect, another revolving door person, and bless his heart, look what he's turned into. We could hold that model that all the other revolving door people might come up straight after all, as he's done.
Yeah.
How's that for a lovely model?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that happened to the public utilities director down here in San Diego when he first said he doesn't care about the FDA and he'll add anything into water that he wants to. But then after talking for an hour, he said, well, when I put it in the water, I'm not going to drink it. But then a few months later, he thought some more and he just quit and he got a job in East County somewhere. He didn't want to be the guy in charge of first fluoridating San Diego. So there's an example of a guy who changed, but it didn't end up helping San Diego, but he changed. I was hoping the mayor would take notice of that, but the mayor just didn't care. Put the new person in, and then he was worse than the other guy.
Has anyone besides me noticed that oh dang, I wanted to ask Dr. Hirzy. I'm going to write him and ask him. I have noticed for years that the signals my body uses to object to this toxicant are the same ones that if you walk into a drugstore, you see a billions of dollars economy in drugs to suppress. It's not that my body is the only one raising these signals. So it's reasonable to suppose that a lot of those other people are getting the same signals from the same ubiquitous toxicant. And I'm very curious, well, in fact, I'm really uncomfortable with the use of the term sensitivity or hypersensitivity, because it makes for patting somebody on the head and saying, oh, I'm so sorry for you, you must be so sensitive. And the subtext of that is always, and I know this will never happen to me or my family because you're different. And it completely absolves people of needing to pay attention to the, excuse me, in many cases, same signals that are going on with them or their families, and their doctors are just patting them on the head and giving them aspirins for, or whatever more horrible chemicals, to suppress the information. And I think the languaging about hypersensitivity is part of this. And I'd like to find a way around it.
Yeah, that's a good point, because there's probably a whole range of sensitivity, a whole range of reactions for any given drug in all different people. Everybody's so different.
There's a whole range in kind and a whole range in intensity. And
exactly.
A whole range in people's awareness and observation. Now, I've stayed alive by learning a couple of kinesiologies and enjoying them for 30 years. And that's something that anybody could learn if they wanted to, but most people don't get to it. People only learn what they're taught.
What is it called?
If you ever went to a chiropractor who does applied kinesiology.
Applied kinesiology. Okay. No, I have never.
Chiropractors are the main people using it.
Mm-hmm.
But not all chiropractors do. It used to be about a third of the chiropractors in the country did, and now more of them are going to electronics, which is very sad because most of that stuff puts out a field that distorts things too.
Mm-hmm.
But you can get straight readout from the system's nervous system and its evaluation of everything that's going on just by checking muscle tone.
Oh, is it muscle testing?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Right, okay. Yes, I've had it. It works.
Well, it works variously, and there's probably 150 different schools of it by now because it's such a nice resource for research that it pops like popcorn. It pops computer languages, so to speak, because we're all walking around with a perfectly lovely built-in biocomputer. And I do and teach a couple of these. And, you know, if everybody were doing this around their kitchen table, the laws would change so fast it would make the corporations' heads spin. So I'm always looking for that one. But meanwhile, the idea of confusing awareness with sensitivity bothers me.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, even for a drug that is useful, even for the drug that can help people, everybody has to be prescribed that drug to get the right dosage that fits for them. And it's not going to work for someone else at that dosage. It may not even work at all for someone else. So, I mean, there's no such thing as this one-size-fits-all thing. On our side, we're always complaining about the dentists who claim that fluoridated water at 0.7, that's one-size-fits-all. Well, that's absurd in medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't be giving it through any medicine through the water supply because that would be a one-size-fits-all assumption.
Right.
And there's going to be people harmed by it, and other people that won't even notice it. It's just, that's biologic variability.
Right.
And that alone, I wrote a separate letter once to the FDA on that to support the petition. Just that idea alone is enough to ban water fluoridation because everyone responds differently to any drug, no matter how useful the drug is. And I didn't even use the word drug because I know they don't want to call fluoride a drug. Dentists refuse to call it a drug. So I use their own terminology. I call it like a toothpaste chemical, an oral ingestible decay preventive, whatever you want to call it, or even a dietary supplement, whatever you want to call it. Even dietary supplements, you can't just say that one tablet per day will work for this person because it depends on what his deficiency really is. He may not even have a deficiency in that supplement. And so that alone, by trying to dump something at a uniform single concentration in public water for this material, should cause FDA to ban it immediately, just for that one fact alone. I've pleaded with them over that. They're just slow to act. I know that there's people there that are supporting the petition and they want to get this banned, but I don't know all the ins and outs as what's preventing them right now.
Scared to lose face is probably the first thing. Or to be sued by everybody.
But I think they have really easy ways to get out of it. All they have to do is say things like, well, delivering the fluoride at one time may have been useful. They didn't ever evaluate it. It wasn't their responsibility. But today you can't do it that way because we know more and more contaminants and industrial compounds are finding their way into our public drinking water. So to recommend using this as a vehicle to deliver this decay preventive is no longer the best way to do it. The water supply is changing, so that way they're not at fault at all. They're just pointing this out and say, this is why we're banning it now. That'd be a nice, easy way to get out of any trouble, and then it would be stopped. I've given them so many ideas on how to sleaze out of it. Just kidding.
just slip right out of it. That's one of the reasons I chose this issue amongst the many issues that I'm passionate about. I chose this one to focus on because what I'm asking for is a simple thing. It's, in fact, the turning off of the knob is not a big deal in and of itself. In fact, in Windsor, Canada, it was a click of a mouse on a computer screen. So that's not the big deal, It's all the conversations around it.
Yeah, and you're reminding me again of the great success that the FDA had. 2 years ago, it came out on my birthday. It was on my birthday. The news came out, and I was ecstatic. After 60 years of feeding chicken feed that had arsenic in it, they finally realized, the FDA, that there was enough going into their livers, into the chicken livers, that it bothered them. It was getting close to where it was annoying, and so all they did is they wrote a letter to the main manufacturer of the chicken feed telling him that they didn't think it was a good idea to use the arsenicals anymore as a preservative for the chicken feed, and it was done. The chemical company said, okay, and they don't add arsenic to the chicken feed anymore. One simple letter, that's all it took.
I thought it was to make the chickens fat.
No, the arsenic was to keep the food from spoiling, because the bacteria would get in there that would kill the chickens. So the arsenic was a cheap way to keep the food from spoiling, and then everything worked out, except the fact that arsenic was building up in the chicken livers.
Right.
But the FDA, that went on for 60 years. 60 years of putting it in the chicken feed. And the FDA, finally, they said, no, our modern, most accurate measurements, we happen to notice that in the liver itself, the rest of the tissue, the rest of the meat, it was fine, but the liver itself, it's high enough that it bothers us. We don't want you to add it anymore. Figure out a different way to treat the chicken feed. And the company could have done this a long time ago because it didn't bother them at all. They didn't even care. They just said, okay, and then they stopped doing it, and they have a different way to do it now. All you have to do is keep the feed dry. If you're just careful about keeping it dry, nothing grows in there. And so it was no big deal. It's just that by tradition, they had always done it that way, so they kept doing it until somebody finally asked them not to. So if the FDA, believe me, if the FDA starts snooping, it's going to stop. All they have to do is snoop around a little bit, and it'll be fine. I still have hope.
Well,
you have hope in the people at the FDA.
Yeah. That's who I keep working on. I still do, as you know, fight the water districts every now and then, but most of my focus is on the FDA almost all the time. And they have not dropped the suit yet. They haven't dropped it. So just keep going.
Remind us, tie this little piece back together. They haven't dropped which suit?
That's the FDA petition to ban water fluoridation for the entire country. That was accepted in 2007 for review. And then the FDA called me and they said, well, congratulations. And I go, oh, does that mean you're going to stop fluoridating? And they go, well, no. And they were laughing. They go, that just means it is going to be something that has to go before the committee. And then 3 years later, they wrote me back and said, well, the committee can't make up its mind. Half the committee wants to ban fluoride for the whole country. The other half doesn't want to get involved. So we have to table it for now because there's more pending issues. And then now it's been 4 more years after that. And they keep occasionally writing to me. But it has not been dropped yet. They're still considering banning fluoridation for the whole country, the FDA. But it's just their one excuse they had in 2010 is they thought that because it's a contaminant in water, they think the EPA should be doing it. But the EPA doesn't want to do it because it's added on purpose into the water. It's not like pollution that's accidentally spilled that they know how to handle. It's something that's added as a treatment. And only the FDA can handle something like that. So there was a total misunderstanding between the EPA and the FDA for years that we're trying to clear up now, where the FDA has to realize the EPA does not have the authority or the ability to monitor fluoridation because it's a treatment.
So you think this is not as intentional a passing the buck as the stuff we've been encountering in Washington?
Well, the FDA, it sort of is in the sense that nobody really wants to do it. But because nothing is being done, it's gradually being sensed by the FDA that somebody has to regulate it, and I'm just pointing out that it has to be only them. There's no other agency that has the expertise to do it. And so, at least they now know that the EPA is not regulating it. because they called me on the phone and said that. They go, well, gee, nobody's regulating it then. And I go, well, yeah, I know. That's why I sent you the petition. And they said, well, we'll just... And so, but like I say, like I was asking Dr. Hirzy if he could write a letter as an EPA type person to seal that. It's not just me saying this. You know, that would really help the petition along.
Right.
Because they keep wanting to drift back to, well, this is a pollutant. Why isn't the EPA doing it? But the EPA doesn't do it because it's not spilled into the water. It's put in to treat teeth. Right. So it just can't be treated the way they had been treating it. So you're right. It was kind of everybody was just dishing it to someone else. But they really did assume, they really believed that the EPA was handling it and looking into the safety of it. And they had their hands full with everything else, and they agreed to take over the bottled water, but not the regular public water. And they thought the EPA really was doing it until they found out later, whoops, no, the EPA just washed their hands of it a long time ago and gave it to the NSF, which is a private organization. They don't know anything. Right. So at least the FDA, the committee now knows that no federal agency is regulating water fluoridation anywhere. It's just nobody's doing it. So I'm trying to close all the little outs, the escape routes from the FDA to get them to do something. So.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. And I was confused because you referred to it as a suit.
Oh no, it's just a petition. It's an online. Not online. They don't accept anything online. It's just a formal petition that I sent in, and the reason they congratulated me is they said they've had petitions just like that over the decades, for years, that they rejected because they didn't have all the required elements, and that's why they called me on the phone and congratulated me, and they said yours had all the required elements, so it is going to be reviewed, and they have to follow certain laws and guidelines in handling it. They can't just throw it away. They have to respond to it. So that's why they were congratulating me. You know, I'm slowly learning about how the FDA operates myself. I don't know anything other than the chemistry, and so that's what I'm finding out. They have to follow their own little guidelines, and they have to write to me occasionally. They've posted all their stuff on FDA.gov. I've written 51 supplemental letters in the last 4 years for extra stuff they needed to know, and they post them all on their government website. So it's really an official thing. They're not just laughing it off.
That is wonderful.
But they wish they could laugh it off. They wish they didn't have to do it because they have to do everything. They just have to do everything. You know, they're monitoring foods that come from foreign countries. Right. They're checking the food when they had the Fukushima disaster. They've been checking the radiation levels in fish that come into the U.S.
Right.
They don't have infinite resources. But I keep encouraging them. I'm never upset with them. I'm always telling them all the good things that they do and blah blah blah. You know, they think I'm their really rally behind the boys guy.
Well, good. You're much better at that than I am.
Well, on paper, not in person. In person, I don't know. I gotta watch myself. I can get upset. But on paper, yeah, I tone it down. That's why I don't like giving talks. I just like doing it on paper, and then I can see exactly what they're seeing.
Yes, it's easier for
I don't have Clint's talent. I do not have your talent, Clint, for being calm.
Well, no, I know it's easy to be calm when I know I'm with a group of advocates like myself. I feel so comfortable to when I'm in front of I'm terrible.
Okay.
I get hot-headed. I lose my patience for people very quickly because when something's so obvious.
Okay, so I don't feel so bad now.
No. No. Yeah, it's the psychology is very funny. My metaphor is it's a house of mirrors. It reminds me exactly of the experience when I was a kid walking into a carnival house of mirrors. We didn't really know where you were exactly, and everywhere you turn is a distortion. It's hard to know who's your allies. You know, people they're going different directions, and even people who say that they're on, they want to end fluoridation. Your allies are going different directions than you, and yet you assume that the whole thing has some design, and that there is there's the carnival guy who runs it, who knows where the exits are. But anyway, that's my kind of metaphor for it. So,
that's how James Deal talks about it. It's like an endless maze that they're in, and they don't know the way out. They don't see an escape route, so they don't want to talk about it. They just stay in the maze.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you find sometimes officials are walking the maze with you, and so I have a lot of patience for people who are who want a better way. But the people who are stuck in their old ways, then I kind of lose patience sometimes. But I'm getting better.
Yeah, I did research work. I did research work in the 80s with a professor at San Diego State, and when Paul Connick came out, he wanted to give a talk at a university, and so I'm busily trying to figure out where I could take him to give a talk, and the idea came up that I could talk to her because she's still a professor down there. So I got her to agree to let Paul talk at San Diego State. It was a great talk, blah, blah, blah. But I lost her as a friend because she got so much backlash from all the other administrators at the school for allowing Connick to speak at San Diego State against fluoridated water. When San Diego was fluoridated, they were so mad at her, she refuses to talk to me anymore. So that was that.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's like a mirror. You think somebody is a certain way, but they may not be.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm actually pursuing the training at the Center for Self-Governance. I did the first course, and its training is to be able to be effective as advocates. And between the 5 classes, there's homework, and you can't really do the next class until you complete your homework. And so I did mine in Sacramento, and I've got a tentative training in San Francisco, level 1 training in San Francisco in July. But anyway, the homework is to sit down with an elected official, and you can't bring up any issues. So
what do you do then?
Yeah, well, that's a lot of people in the class are dumbfounded by that. I get it that they're human beings, and really, people, of course, everyone has their issue, and 99% of their conversations are just basically navigating different people's issues that they bring to her or him. And I'm just doing a meet and greet is what they're called, apparently. There's a checkbox for that, and so I haven't done it yet, but it's just to get yourself. It's not about making a change to fluoridation in that meeting. It's really an exercise early on in the coursework to get you just comfortable talking with elected officials. Eliminating any kind of prejudice or assumptions you had about them because of their position, and just being like human being to human being. You can ask about their motivations, of course. You can ask about the things that are important to them. You can talk about their personal life, their family life, whatever. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing that will give me the patience, and because it's really kind of almost like when I'm impatient, it's like an autonomic response, of kind of like knee-jerk response. I get hot-headed before it's just too late. It just happens. So I think like just being in the office talking about the weather or whatever might help train the body to recognize that you don't have to freak out if someone's, you're sitting right in front of somebody who can make a big difference with this issue.
Yeah. Richard, have you seen Delkin Waugh's last post on Facebook?
Who?
Says he was Delkin Waugh. Declan
Waugh.
Oh,
yeah.
About the horses?
Oh, no, I didn't see that one.
Oh, well, he said that somebody in the U.S. contacted him to investigate the stud farms in Ireland using fluoridated water. But the article that he has put with it is that 5 horses
died Friday evening at the Clone Mel Racing meeting. 5.
Is that on Facebook?
Yeah, I didn't read that. I'm surprised he didn't send it to me directly. He usually sends me stuff directly.
Ah. I see he posted this 4 hours ago, and I just got it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I hadn't
seen the 144 slides he did?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yesterday he posted his slide deck of 140 slides. He did a presentation about all kinds of asthmas and respiratory diseases.
I thought it was like 160 pages. 165.
Yeah, I skimmed through it all, but wow.
Yeah, I read that one.
Enormous. I need to have him on a teleconference again.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah, as far as getting involved with city officials and stuff and activism and all that, it's so hard for me because I kind of want to just describe the issue that I've thought through, and I just kind of unrealistically expect other people to look at it the way I do that. And then I learned once from a city council person that it doesn't really matter how factual you really are when a person speaks to a city council. It's completely irrelevant. And I go, what does work to get a change instituted then? And he goes, the people that actually make a change are the ones that keep coming to the council meeting, and 10 years later you're still standing there saying the same thing you did 10 years ago, and all the other people that opposed you are now gone. That's what matters, and then they change. Mm-hmm. That's what he actually told me. So it's then when I just kind of gave up, because I just like relying on the facts. I want to see the facts. I want to see what's going on, not the guy who talks the longest. And so it just blew me away that councils can think that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if you're that type of a person, if you're that type of a person and you like doing that, interacting with the council regularly all the time, then that's would be a great way to get something changed. Getting in with them, like you say.
Well, they're human beings.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, when I started fighting fluoride in the 70s, it's been that long. I just kind of thought it would take a few years and people would read this stuff, they'd know what's wrong with it, and it would stop. I mean, man, how naive was that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure. I think that's universal. All of us fluoride activists started with some naivete.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder about the showing up over and over again saying the same thing, because I feel like that's liable to be tiresome.
Yeah, it would be. But that's what he actually told me. He's been a city council person for, his whole adult career. That's usually what changes when somebody, because I think it's not the facts so much in the sentences. It's the fact that you're dedicated to it, and they can see that you really mean business. You really are, speaking from the heart. I don't know what it takes to finally get them to believe something, but that's what he said.
Wow. No, but we see people showing up like that all the time with what they consider to be facts and sentences that are liable to that sound merely nuts and are liable to repel people, and the more they say them over again, the more they just sound crazy.
That's what I would think. That's why I thought I could go and speak the facts, show the data, show the real stuff, and then walk away and be done. But I always lose that way. Or if the guy does believe me, then he quits. That's the only success I have with these people.
Right.